Chapter 524. Can't sleep when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the wall is down, everyone gives it a push. The words of the ancients are the most reliable. In most people's eyes, the Qin family was on the verge of collapsing. Once the Qin family fell, the benefits involved would not be small. That would be extremely terrifying, and anyone would be jealous of it. Not to mention the listed and non-listed companies controlled by the Chang and family, and the large companies in which the Chang and family was a shareholder. The financial license, which was extremely difficult to get now, was enough to drive many people crazy. So some people finally couldn't help but jump out at the same time, with the intention of dividing the Qin family. Internal troubles and external aggression were the Qin clan's situation. Collusion was the Qin clan's greatest fear. They were not afraid of thieves stealing, but they were afraid of thieves thinking about them. Many people were thinking about the Qin clan now. Although it was late at night, many people in the Qin clan were not sleepy. Who could fall asleep when people were thinking about them? Perhaps when he woke up tomorrow morning, the prosperity in front of him would become a fleeting cloud. In Beijing, Qin Chang'an, who had not rested yet, was sitting in the study, staring at the bright moon in the night sky through the window. Gongsun had come to remind him several times. After all, he was injured today, but Qin Chang'an was still unmoved. Qinghuan, I owe you too much. I'm afraid that I won't have the face to see you again. But don't worry. Even if I have to sacrifice myself, I will protect Ran Ran and Sheng. Qin Chang'an muttered to himself. There was a photo frame on the desk, which was a group photo of the four of them. This photo had been with him for many years. Sometimes, he would take it with him when he went on a business trip. It always reminded him of the grudges in the past and encouraged him to keep moving forward. These years, Qin Chang'an had retaliated against many people, but some people behind the scenes were still at large. At this time, Gongsun came in again. He sighed and said, "Master, it's late. You should rest. Your health is important." "I'll sleep soon. Gongsun, you don't need to worry about me. You've been exhausted recently. Go to bed early." Qin Chang'an stood up and pulled the curtain. If Mr. Ding was his left arm, then Gongsun was his right arm. Moreover, one was a scholar while the other was a martial artist. However, after so many years, many people thought that Gongsun was just a butler or servant of the Qin family and had long forgotten his true identity. Gongsun had not seen Qin Chang'an so tired for many years, especially in the past 10 years. Whether it was Qin Chang'an or the Qin family, they were more and more admired by everyone. Every day, they reached new heights. Perhaps he had walked too fast and needed to rest before continuing on his journey. Or perhaps he had fallen from his peak and started to go downhill. But no matter what, Gongsun knew what he had to do. Gongsun hesitated for a moment and said, "Master, when it's time for me to do something, you don't have to be polite or shy away. So many years have passed. It's time for me to do something for the Qin family." Of course, Qin Chang'an knew what Gongsun meant. After all, Gongsun knew everything about the Qin family and him better than anyone else. If Gongsun could say something like that, it could be seen what kind of situation the Qin family was in now. Qin Chang'an let out a long sigh. It was pathetic and funny. Was it really so bitter? Qin Chang'an squinted and said, "It's not that bad yet. If it really comes to that, I won't be polite either." Gongsun was silent. He had been in the Qin family for so many years and spent almost every day with Qin Chang'an. The tacit understanding between them did not need words. The reason why he spoke tonight was that he was afraid that at some point, Qin Chang'an would not want to owe him anymore. Gongsun said respectfully, "Master, then you should rest early. I won't disturb you anymore." Then he quietly left the study. On the second floor of the Sihiyuan, Zhao Anji had not slept yet. Lying on the bed, she tossed and turned and could not fall asleep. Although she had confirmed that Yaya was fine, Zhao Anji was still worried without this girl by her side, because there were too many variables. Zhao Anji was not sure whether the target of the group of people in Shanghai tonight was Qin Sheng, Qin Ran, or Yaya. After all, they were Qin Chang'an's children. But it was not guaranteed that Yaya was also their target. More than 20 years have passed, and the storm is coming again. "Qin Changxing, can you really stay in Wutai Mountain?" Zhao Anji, seemed to be questioning Qin Changxing. Zhao Anji began to doubt whether it was the right time for her to return to China. But if the Qin family was really in trouble, she could not be like Qin Changxing and protect herself. It seemed too unfair to always let Qin Chang'an take all the responsibility of the Qin family. Therefore, Zhao Anji did not regret getting involved, even if she and Yaya were also in danger. In Shanghai, Qin Ran also did not sleep. She sat in front of the window and stared blankly. Originally, she thought that the Qin family would prosper after finding her younger brother. She did not expect that a bigger crisis would come so soon. Qin Ran smiled strangely. Regardless of these trivial things, it was really good for her younger brother to come back. Because this younger brother would tell her at any time, "Sister, don't be afraid. You still have me." She did not need to pretend to be strong, nor did she need to cry late at night. No matter how bad the situation was, they could rely on each other for survival. In the master bedroom, Qin Sheng also did not sleep. On the one hand, his wound was a little painful, and on the other hand, he was thinking about many things. As Qin Sheng said, no matter in what environment, as a man, he should bear more responsibilities and take the initiative to carry a lot of things. This was what a man must do. Now, Qin Sheng had to carry a lot of things, because he wanted to protect the people he wanted to protect. Lying in Qin Sheng's arms, Lin Su suddenly asked, "Can't sleep?" Qin Sheng was a little surprised and said, "Why are you still awake?" "I can't sleep either," Lin Su said in a low voice. Qin Sheng subconsciously hugged Lin Su tightly and said, "What's wrong? I'm worried about you. Don't take such risks in the future, okay? I'm very afraid of losing you, because I don't know how I can continue to live if I lose you. Every time you get hurt, I feel very bad. It seems that it is even worse than when I get hurt," Lin Su said, biting her lower lip. Although she did not want to say these things, she knew that it would make Qin Sheng more stressed. She was afraid that if she did not say it, what if she did not have a chance to say it? Qin Sheng had escaped from death many times. Being able to live until now, Qin Sheng felt that he was lucky. Moreover, no one's luck would be so good all the time. If one day God was unhappy, he would be taken away just like that. So Qin Sheng hesitated for a moment and said, "Wife, if one day something really happens to me, you must live well, better than what you are living now. In this way, you can continue to walk on the path of what I have not experienced, what I have not accomplished, and what I have not enjoyed, and slowly forget me. Just forget me. Don't say such things." Lin Su was a little emotional and turned around, because she felt that Qin Sheng seemed to be telling her what to do after his death. She really did not want to see that day, ever. Qin Sheng kissed Lin Su's forehead gently and said, "Silly girl, I'm just saying if. No matter what kind of situation I encounter, I will try my best to live on. I will try my best as long as there is a glimmer of hope, because I promise to keep you company until our hair turns white." "Okay." Lin Su hugged Qin Sheng tightly and nodded. Qin Sheng squinted and smiled. "Sleepy good." In the morning, when Qin Sheng and the others got up and went downstairs, Zhuangzhou was already waiting for them. After seeing Zhuangzhou, Qin Ran said, "Uncle Zhuangzhou, when did you arrive?" "I arrived last night. What else do you need to pack? Let's try to go back as soon as possible, so that your father can rest assured," Zhuangzhou said in a low voice. Qin Ran smiled casually and said, "Uncle Zhuangzhou, take Qin Sheng and Yaya back to Beijing first. I have not finished the business in Shanghai. I will go back after a while." Qin Jing was surprised and said, "Sister, you are not going back?" Qin Ran held Qin Jing's hand and said, "Yaya, you go back with your brother first. I will go back as soon as I finish the business. Don't worry about me." "Sister," Qin Jing was a little worried. After hearing this, Zhuangzhou frowned slightly and said, Ran, if you don't want to go back, you'd better discuss it with your father first. Otherwise, I will not be able to make a decision on my own." Qin Ran did not say much. She could not put Uncle Zhuangzhou in a difficult position, so she took out her phone and walked out of the yard to call the old man. Of course, she had a way to persuade the old man. As long as she lived with her small aunt or her grandmother, no one would dare to touch her. Moreover, she would be protected by the Qin family's bodyguards. After a few minutes, Qin Ran returned to the living room and handed the phone to Zhuang Zhou. "Uncle Zhuang Zhou, my father has agreed. Let him talk to you." Zhuang Zhou took the phone and was relieved after hearing Qin Chang'an's confirmation. Zhuang Zhou waited for Qin Sheng and the others outside. Inside, people were still discussing. Lin Su wanted to stay with Qin Ran in Shanghai because there were many things in the company that needed her to deal with. After all, she was responsible for these things during this period. If she went to Beijing with them, Qin Ran would be really tired and busy. Qin Sheng finally agreed because he felt that it might be more dangerous for Lin Su to go with him. It was relatively safer for her to stay in Shanghai. After leaving Xishan Golf Resort, Qin Sheng did not go to the airport with Zhuang Zhou directly. Instead, he wanted to go to the company with his sister and Lin Su first. There were some important things to worry about, and some small things could not be forgotten. Qin Ran and Lin Su did not think much about it. After arriving at Lujiazui, Xia Ding went directly to number 1 Zhongliang Ocean View. He needed to rest for a few days. What happened last night had a great impact on him. It was also the first time he had experienced such things. Chang Baji followed Qin Sheng back to Beijing. As long as Chang Baji was by Qin Sheng's side and there were no other concerns, Qin Sheng and Chang Baji could totally protect themselves based on their strength. In the World Financial Center, Wuhan was a little confused today. What was going on? It was rare that Sister Ran and Su Su did not come to the company today. Usually, they were the first to come to the company, and they did not tell her in advance. Did something happen? Chapter 525. Chapter 526. Death appearance last night's lightning and thunder made many people unable to sleep well. However, after a night of wind and rain, everything seemed to have calmed down again as if nothing had happened. However, the calmer the surface of the lake, the more turbulent the undercurrents were. No one dared to be certain whether the Qin family ship would sink after hitting the rocks or break the waves. Originally, Qin Sheng could have taken Qin Jing back to Beijing directly. However, he insisted on coming to the company before leaving. Apart from dealing with that seemingly small matter, he wanted to release a message to everyone. Having gotten used to working in a large investment bank abroad, Wuhan had very high standards when it came to dressing up. Today, she was still dressed very formally. After all, they were dealing with some top-notch corporate clients, and they couldn't let the clients think that they were too low class. Moreover, the company had very high standards. After coming to the Shanghai branch, although the company didn't have such strict requirements, Wuhan still maintained such a habit. However, many people in the company were pointing at her, and Wuhan didn't bother to pay attention to them. Although she was only Qin Ran's assistant now, it was temporary after all. After finishing these things, she would go to Beijing to work, so there was no need to care about these small things. Sometimes, Wuhan could be quite stubborn. Once she had set her mind on something, she would not give up easily. When she was working in an investment bank overseas, the workload was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. There were some projects that many of her colleagues felt that they could not carry on. However, Wuhan did not believe in that. She could put in more effort than the others and work overtime continuously for a month. In the end, she would lead the team to clinch that project. As for the recent matters, she and Lin Su were always the first to arrive and the last to leave. She had to finish them. She knew the situation of the Qin family. When Qin Ran asked her to stay in Shanghai to take over this matter, Wuhan knew what had happened to the Qin family. After all, she had been in this circle for a long time. However, what she didn't expect was that the Qin family situation was getting worse and worse. Her parents also realized something and took the initiative to tell Wuhan that if she didn't want to go to the Chang'an department, they could arrange for her to work in other top multinational companies. After all, with Wuhan's resume, she could go anywhere. Wuhan understood what her parents meant. It was not that her parents did not think highly of the Chang'an department, but that they wanted her to have a better choice. However, Wuhan gave up. She had her own ideas. Moreover, she had promised the Qin family. Even if she had to give up, it would not be now. She would only consider it if the Qin family really collapsed. Today, Wuhan went to work very early as usual. The The matter in Shanghai had already reached the final stage. As long as these projects were sorted out clearly, the next action in Beijing could be carried out quickly. Now, time was of the essence for the Qin family. Usually, Lin Su and Qin Ran would have already arrived at this time. The three beauties' working hours were almost the same. However, today was very unexpected. Even though it was already the normal working hours, they were still not here. Wu Han started to get a little worried. When she was about to make a call, she saw Qin Ran and Lin Su walking in. However, apart from them, there were quite a number of outsiders. She had seen all of them except for Zhuangzhou. However, it did not occur to her that Qin Sheng would also come here. This made Wu Han quite surprised. She had a pretty good impression of Qin Sheng. Feeling somewhat puzzled, Wu Han walked over and said, "Sister Ran, Su, why are you so late today?" Qin Ran smiled and said, "I was with Susa last night. I was delayed by something this morning, so I'm late." Wu Han did not think much about it. She looked at Qin Sheng with a smile and said, "Long time no see. When did you come back to Shanghai?" Wu Han did not know that Lin Su was Qin Sheng's girlfriend. She did not think much about it either. It was just a polite greeting between friends. Qin Sheng also replied with a smile, "I just arrived yesterday. You look a little thinner. You must have worked hard recently." Wu Han was somewhat embarrassed as she said, "I'm used to it after so many years." Lin Su did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. She was not surprised that Qin Sheng and Wu Han knew each other, nor would she be jealous. She just smiled and watched them chatting. At this time, Qin Ran opened her mouth and said, "Wu Han, come here. I have something to tell you." After Wu Han greeted the others, she left with Qin Ran. Lin Su also immersed herself in her work immediately. The others just sat in the office and drank tea. Qin Jing's mood had already recovered. She whispered to Qin Sheng, "Brother, that sister seems to be interested in you. You have to be careful. Be careful in case your sister-in-law gets jealous." Qin Sheng did not know whether he should laugh or cry as he said, "You naughty girl." More than 10 minutes later, in the conference room of the Shanghai branch company, a group of group executives were whispering in the conference room. They were all guessing the meaning of this meeting suddenly. After all, there was no advance notice. Generally speaking, they should be informed of the meeting in advance in case of conflicts with other matters. Zhao Changel was the vice president of the company. If Qin Ran was not included, his position in the company was ranked third. In front of him were the general manager and the executive vice president. That was why he could be so unscrupulous. Today, Wu Han also had a routine meeting. Since she was the vice president of Qin Ran, her position was also very high. After all, Qin Ran had announced to the public that she was seconded from the headquarters in Beijing, which was like a senior official seconded for Beijing. Wu Han sat in the seat next to Zhao Changel. Zhao Changel was very happy in his heart. In this way, he could get closer to Wu Han. As for Lin Su, the chance was very slim. Although he was not sure about the background of Lin Su's boyfriend, this kind of action of poaching people had always been very difficult. However, he was sure that Wu Han did not have a boyfriend. Moreover, he also knew that Wu Han's family seemed to be not simple. Zhao Changel asked in a low voice, "Wu Han, do you know why we held this executive meeting all of a sudden?" It seems that it was Boss Qin's suggestion. After all, Wu Han was Qin Ran's assistant. Since it was Wu Han who informed him about this matter, she should know more inside information. Currently, in the Shanghai branch company, Qin Ran's position was ranked just below the general manager. After all, everyone knew Qin Ran's identity. She was the daughter of the big boss of the group. Who dared to offend her? Wu Han was very disgusted with Zhao Changel. She purposely distanced herself from him. She said, "I don't know about this. You can ask Boss Sun and Boss Tang. I am just an assistant. How would I know these things?" Zhao Changel said disdainfully in his heart, "Stop pretending to be a bitch. When I get you someday, I will definitely make you beg for mercy on the bed." However, he was still very polite on the surface. Not a single bit of anger could be seen on his face. He said shamelessly, "Wu Han, I know that you have some opinions about me. Actually, I'm not what you think I am. Is there any misunderstanding between us? Why don't we make an appointment to have a chat?" Wu Han rejected him tactfully and said, "Boss Zhao, there is no need for that. You're a busy man. I can't afford to waste your time." After that, she looked at her phone on purpose. Zhao Changel was deflated again. He had no choice but to turn his head resentfully. He looked at the executive vice president beside him and said, "Boss Tang, what's going on? Why did this Missy suddenly hold a meeting? Why didn't she inform us in advance? I've already stood my client up." Zhao Changel had a good relationship with Boss Tang. Although Boss Tang was very unhappy about Qin Ran's position, they did not have any conflict of power. Qin Ran's main job was to borrow the elites of the Shanghai branch company to explore the overseas projects. Anyway, she would become powerful after the end of the project. Moreover, her position would not be affected. Boss Tang frowned slightly and said, "I heard it from Boss Sun just now. It seems that the newly appointed executive director of the group's board of directors is temporarily inspecting the Shanghai branch company. That's why she held this meeting." Zhao Changel was a little surprised. He said, "What's going on? Why didn't I know about it? When did the group's board of directors elect a new director? This is not a small matter. Boss Tang, do you know who this person is?" Boss Tang, who was in his early 40s, was a little fat. However, he was indeed very capable. It was said that this year he might be transferred to the headquarters in Beijing or be in charge of an independent subsidiary company in Shanghai. Boss Tang smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know about these matters of the top management. Maybe Boss Sun knows a little. Anyway, you should understand that none of the directors of our group are ordinary. They're all big shots with their hands and eyes wide open." Zhao Changel shrugged and said, "That's true. However, these things are too far away from small fries like us. We should just do what we should do and do our jobs well." At this time, the office door was pushed open. Boss Sun, the person in charge of the Shanghai branch company, and Qin Ran, who had come out of nowhere, walked in slowly. Boss Sun's original name was Sun Songfei. He was also a senior figure in the company. Since he could be in charge of all the matters in Shanghai, it could be seen that his weight in the company was not simple. He was also Qin Chang'an's confidant. At this time, everyone also became serious and did not dare to whisper anymore. Boss Sun walked to the front and stopped. Qin Ran stood next to him and looked at everyone present with a smile. Although this was just an ordinary meeting, it was of great significance to the Qin family. This was because this was the first time that Qin Sheng appeared as the new director of the group. Everyone must be very curious about why we suddenly have this meeting. Maybe some of you already know about it. Actually, I'm also very surprised. I did not expect such a surprise. At the same time, this is also an unexpected surprise for our Shanghai branch. Boss Sun was 45 years old this year, but he looked very energetic. He was full of energy, and the smile on his face was also very warm. He looked at everyone and continued, "Maybe many of you already know that just a few days ago, the headquarters of the group in Beijing held a temporary shareholders meeting and a board of directors meeting. They elected 2 new board members." After hearing this news, everyone instantly understood what it meant. They whispered to each other and guessed that these 2 new directors had come to the Shanghai branch. "Okay, I will not keep you in suspense. I will reveal this mystery to everyone," Boss Sun said happily. Then, his tone changed and became very formal. He said, "Next, let us welcome the non-executive director of the group, Mr. Qin Sheng, with warm applause to visit the Shanghai branch." Boss Sun and Qin Ran were the first to applaud. Everyone else stood up and applauded at the same time. However, some people were a little shocked after hearing the name of this director. Qin Sheng? His surname was also Qin. Could it be that he was also a member of the Qin family? What was his relationship with the big boss and this rich young lady who came to Shanghai out of nowhere? This included Zhao Changel. After all, there must be something wrong if there was something unusual. At this time, Qin Sheng, who had been waiting outside the meeting room, slowly walked in with a smile on his face. He was neither servile nor overbearing. He smiled and waved to everyone. Everyone was surprised that this newly elected director was so young. Then, they continued to guess the relationship between this director and the big boss, Qin Chang'an. After all, he was really too young, and his name was too eye-catching. Only Zhao Changel, after seeing the appearance of this new director, was dumbfounded and shocked. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Chapter 526. Chapter 527. Death, could he handle it? When he walked into the Chong and group's board meeting that day, Qin Sheng knew how to face others from now on. He would put on a thick armor to welcome all the applause and storms. Therefore, this executive meeting of the Shanghai branch was just SOSO. Qin Sheng could face it easily and calmly, and he would do a better job. From the moment he walked into the meeting room to the moment he expressed his gratitude, Qin Sheng did a good job. However, he did not look at Zhao Chang'e from beginning to end. After all, Zhao Chang'e was not qualified to be his opponent. Of course, he did not go to the World Financial Center just for Zhao Chang'e. That would be making a big fuss over nothing. Zhao Chang'e just wanted to meet him to extinguish his fantasy about Lin Su, so that Lin Su would have less trouble in the future. The most important thing was that, as Qin Ran had guessed, Qin Sheng would show up as a director of the Chong and group and the son of Qin Chang'an. From then on, he would come to the front of the stage from behind the scenes, which was also a formal declaration of war to the mastermind behind the incident last night. He wanted to tell them that Qin Sheng was not easily frightened and that he would accompany them to the end. After Qin Sheng expressed his gratitude, he sat in the first seat on the left. Qin Ran sat close to Qin Sheng. Although they did not get the exact answer, they concluded that this new director was definitely a member of the Qin family. However, they did not know his relationship with Qin Chang'an or Qin Ran. He might be Qin Chang'an's nephew or Qin Ran's cousin. After all, everyone knew that the big boss did not have a son, only a daughter. Sun Songfei gestured for everyone to sit down. Zhao Chang'e, who had not come to his senses, was still standing there, staring at Qin Sheng, who had already sat down. He did not expect that the man he met yesterday afternoon, who was also Lin Su's boyfriend, was actually the new director of the Chong and group. Such a young director would probably shock the whole Chong and group. Zhao Chang'e thought that Qin Sheng came here today for him. He had been pestering Lin Su these days, and now Qin Sheng, her real boyfriend, was here to deal with him. What was funny was that before this, he was still guessing about this man's background and whether he would have a chance to win over Qin Sheng. Now he only hoped that this man could spare him or beg for mercy, or he would have to get out of this position. Chang'e, why are you in a daze? Do you know Chairman Qin? Sun Songfei asked with a slight frown. It was not until then that Zhao Chang'e came back to his senses. He felt somewhat embarrassed and at a loss. At this time, Qin Sheng happened to look him up and down with a playful look, as if he was looking at a prey that was about to die. Zhao Chang'e hurriedly replied, "Yes, I don't know. How could I possibly know Chairman Qin?" Sun Songfei said unhappily. "Then why don't you sit down quickly?" After Zhao Chang'e sat down, Sun Songfei immediately looked at Qin Sheng with a smile on his face and said, "Chairman Qin, I guess everyone didn't expect that you would suddenly inspect our Shanghai branch. Everyone here is the management of the Shanghai branch. Let me give you a brief introduction first, then let everyone report to you." "Thank you, Mr. Sun," Qin Sheng said politely. He had given Sun Songfei enough face. In the future, he would gradually cultivate his inner circle. He would start from the Shanghai branch. Within an hour, the management of the Shanghai branch reported their work to Qin Sheng one by one. They dared not treat this as a mere formality. After all, Qin Sheng was in a high position and was also a member of the Qin family. They could not guarantee that this newly appointed director would punish them as a warning to others. Qin Sheng listened to them very carefully. When he did not understand, he would take the initiative to ask. He seemed to be quite approachable. However, when Zhao Chang'e reported, Sun Songfei and the others were quite puzzled. They did not know what was wrong with Zhao Chang'e today. He was so nervous that he even stuttered a little. His words were even more illogical. Sun Songfei was already very unhappy. This was a slap in his face, which would make Qin Sheng think that there was something wrong with his ability. After Zhao Chang'e finished reporting his work with great difficulty, he could not wait to sit down. During the whole process, he almost did not dare to look at Qin Sheng's eyes. He kept thinking whether this man would take revenge on him in public or not, and whether he should take the initiative to explain the misunderstanding later. Sitting next to Zhao Chang'e, Wu Han, like the others, was also wondering what was wrong with Zhao Chang'e today. It seemed that he was very afraid of Qin Sheng. However, Wuhan did not bother to care about Zhao Chang'e. Her attention was all on Qin Sheng now. If Sister Ran had not asked her to inform all the management of the meeting just now, she would not have known that Qin Sheng had been elected as the new director of the Chang branch. This meant a lot to Qin Sheng, which meant that Qin Sheng had officially entered the Chang and branch and started to prepare for his succession. After the meeting, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng went to Sun Songfei's office to chat. Naturally, the others were not qualified to follow them in. Outside the office, Vice President Tang frowned and asked, "Chang'e, what happened to you just now? How could you drop the ball at such a critical moment? Old Sun is already very unhappy. Be careful, or you will be scolded later." At this moment, Zhao Chang'e was very agitated, so he said impatiently, "I will be scolded later. Let's talk about it later." In the office, Sun Songfei took the initiative to invite Qin Sheng to have lunch together. Qin Sheng had to say politely, "Uncle Sun, I guess I can't have lunch with you. I will go back to Beijing in a while. We can only wait for the next time when I come to Shanghai or when you come to Beijing. Why are you in such a hurry?" Sun Songfei was surprised. However, Qin Sheng calling him Uncle Sun made Sun Songfei enjoy it very much. At least this crown prince was not arrogant or foppish as he had imagined. In this way, he felt more comfortable to interact with him. Qin Sheng said politely, "I have just taken office. There are still a lot of things to understand. Otherwise, I can't be criticized by others. Even if the old man doesn't care, I care." "You are right. Then I won't keep you," Sun Songfei said with a smile. Qin Sheng took Sun Songfei's arm and said, "Uncle Sun, the group is not peaceful, so please take care of Shanghai. If anything happens, I also want to take care of it on behalf of the old man." Although Qin Sheng's words were not explicit, the meaning was obvious. Shanghai was one of the three major branches of the Chang and group. Besides Beijing, there were Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. Shenzhen was the first. After all, the headquarters of several subsidiaries were located there. Shanghai was special. It was not a simple branch. For example, there were other subsidiaries in Shanghai, which were the Sun companies of the group. However, the company that Sun Songfei was in charge of reported directly to the headquarters. It was mainly responsible for contacting with financial institutions and some investment affairs. Therefore, Sun Songfei's position was very important. This was also the reason why Qin Ran had to come to Shanghai to do what she wanted to do. Of course, Sun Songfei understood Qin Sheng's meaning. He said with a faint smile, "Qin Sheng, there are no outsiders now. I will not stand on ceremony. I have followed Master Qin for many years. There are some things that I know well. You can rest assured." "Then I thank you, Uncle Sun," Qin Sheng said very respectfully. When Qin Sheng came out of Sun Songfei's office, he saw Zhao Chang'e waiting there. He was not surprised. He knew that Zhao Chang'e made this choice after thinking for a long time. He must have been conflicted for a long time. "Chairman Qin, I have something to tell you." Zhao Chang'e bit the bullet and said. Sun Songfei's eyes showed that he was not happy. Qin Sheng patted Zhao Chang'e's shoulder and said, "Mr. Zhao, just work hard. Don't think too much about some things. But in the future, you should restrain yourself in the company. Do you understand?" Qin Sheng's voice was very low. Only Zhao Chang'e could hear it. Hearing this, Zhao Chang'e let out a long sigh of relief. Of course, he understood Qin Sheng's meaning. He said in a hurry, "Chairman Qin, I was immature before. I will definitely change in the future." Qin Sheng did not need to lower himself to Zhao Chang'e's level. So he said, "That's good." When Qin Sheng returned to Qin Ran's office, everyone was waiting for him. Wuhan walked over first and said, "Congratulations. Alas, don't mock me. My butt is on fire. I don't know whether it is a blessing or a curse." Qin Sheng laughed at himself. Wuhan found it funny and said, "Don't be dejected. You will experience this sooner or later. You can't avoid it. It is just a matter of time." "That's true," Qin Sheng shrugged and said. After finishing these trivial things, Qin Sheng and Qin Jing were ready to go back to Beijing. They declined the people who wanted to see them off. After all, it was not a farewell of life and death. Everyone had things to do. They could go directly to the airport. With the two big bosses, Zhuangzhou and Changbaji, escorting them, no one had to worry about anything. There were no twists and turns on the way back to Beijing. Maybe it was because of what had happened last night. Qin Jing was very dependent on Qin Sheng. No matter where she went, she would follow him. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he also felt sorry for her. At 12:30 p.m., Qin Sheng and Qin Jing arrived at the Sihiyuan of the Qin family on time. As soon as they entered the door, they could feel the atmosphere of the Qin family Sihiyuan was different from the past. The number of bodyguards had increased a lot. Even outside the gate, there were secret sentries. It could be seen how big the incident last night was. Qin Chang'an and Zhao Anji did not go out today. They had been waiting for the two kids to come back. They had already heard the news that Qin Ran would not come back. After seeing Yaya, Zhao Anji quickly held her in her arms and comforted her. Yaya, I finally see you. I was so worried. Mom, I'm fine, Qin Jing replied with a strong heart. Zhao Anji looked at her worriedly, for fear that Yaya had deliberately lied to her last night. After confirming again and again, she was relieved and said, "It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine." After entering the door, Qin Sheng saw Qin Chang'an, whose arm was wrapped in bandages. The look in his eyes was somewhat complicated. It was the first time that he had seen Qin Chang'an so embarrassed. Qin Sheng walked slowly to Qin Chang'an and said in a low voice, "You still don't know who it is? If you want to know, you will know very soon. But this time, I don't want everyone to know," Qin Chang'an explained. Qin Sheng did not comfort the old man. It was meaningless to say these words. The old man was not the kind of person who needed comforting. What he had experienced was far beyond Qin Sheng's imagination. So Qin Sheng just asked, "Then what should we do next?" "You just need to wait. Soon, they will jump out again," Qin Chang'an sneered and said. Qin Sheng was a little confused. Waiting like this is not a solution. Qin Chang'an frowned and explained, "You want to take the initiative to attack? Can you handle it?" Now, it is not only how to deal with the old enemy of the Qin family, but also how to deal with those jackals who are eyeing the cake of the Qin family. Qin Sheng nodded thoughtfully and said, "I see." Chapter 527. Chapter 528. Support, monthly tickets, monthly tickets. Where's everyone's monthly tickets? Although what happened last night had happened, for Qin Sheng, life would not end because of this. It was not like this had never happened before. He still lived to this day, and his life was getting better and better. However, the Qin family's affairs disrupted Qin Sheng's rhythm. He had planned to go back to Shanghai to take revenge on Yin Chaozong after dealing with the things in Xi'an, and also deal with the trivial things in Hangzhou. He could not let those people wait for too long. Now it seemed that he would not have the chance to do so in a short time. After talking about these trifles, Qin Sheng went to have a rest. After the high-intensity fighting and basically did not sleep last night, Qin Sheng was already very tired at this moment. During this period, Changbaji lived in the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. In this way, the security of the Qin family would be strengthened. Secondly, he could protect Qin Sheng at any time. He slept until the evening. When he woke up, the others in the Sihiyuan had already gone out. Zhao Anji took Qin Jing to the Zhao family, probably to take this opportunity to force the Zhao family to abdicate again. There was only one reason, which was that the Zhao family had bullied his niece. As her uncle, should he help her or not? It seemed that Qin Chang'an was on a business trip. According to the servants in the Sihiyuan, he went to Shenzhen. Qin Sheng was the only one left in the Sihiyuan. Qin Sheng first contacted a hospital to change his dressing, and then called his grandmother to tell her that he had gone back to Beijing. The old lady complained, "Why are you in such a hurry? I thought you would stay in Shanghai for a few more days." Qin Sheng smiled and comforted the old lady. This private hospital was the property of the Chang and department, and a medical and health company was in charge of it, so it would not cause any unnecessary trouble. After changing his dressing, Qin Sheng went to a specialty restaurant in Zenjiku. In the evening, his cousin invited him to dinner, and the place was booked by him. Coincidentally, Qin Sheng was going to Tsinghua University tomorrow, so he did not go back to the Sihiyuan, but directly stayed in the house in Hadian. The one who invited Qin Sheng to dinner was Zhu Qingyuan, who was a politician. He happened to be in Beijing for a meeting these 2 days. After finishing his business, he thought of Qin Sheng, so he called him and invited him. Anyway, they had not seen each other for a long time. Because it was a private matter, Zhu Qingyuan went out to this restaurant alone, without his secretary or driver. Zhu Qingyuan had always been very clear when it came to separating public and private affairs. He was afraid of being used by people with ulterior motives. Apart from Chang Baji's personal protection, there were also 4 bodyguards. These were all arranged by Gongsun. It was not a bad thing to be careful. Qin Sheng was different. He had a grand entrance. Several bodyguards were waiting outside. Chang Baji accompanied Qin Sheng in. In the end, they chose to sit at the next table so that they would not disturb Qin Sheng and Zhu Qingyuan's conversation. When Qin Sheng saw Zhu Qingyuan and was about to greet him, Zhu Qingyuan waved his hand casually and said, "Since there are no outsiders here, we don't have to be so polite. Take a seat." Qin Sheng was more familiar with this big cousin. He had only met his second cousin, Zhu Fengyuan, once. Nowadays, the army was more strict, so he seldom showed up in public. "I heard from your sister that you just came back from Shanghai. Have you met old madam and sister-in-law?" Zhu Qingyuan asked after asking the waiter to bring the menu. Usually, when Qin Sheng saw him, there were many people, so Zhu Qingyuan was very low-key. But this time, when they were alone, Qin Sheng could definitely feel this big cousin's authority. Hearing Zhu Qingyuan's words, Qin Sheng suddenly realized that he went yesterday and came back today in a hurry. He only saw old madam and did not meet small aunt, let alone greet her. This was not very polite. So Qin Sheng exclaimed, "Oh, cousin, if you didn't remind me, I almost forgot. I went in a hurry and only saw grandmother. I didn't have time to meet small aunt. Most importantly, I forgot to greet her." Hearing this, Zhu Qingyuan found it funny and said, "Qin Sheng, this is not good. If small aunt knows, she will definitely be sad. You should call her now." Qin Sheng did not delay. He immediately took out his phone and dialed Zhu Qingyuan's number. On the other side, Zhu Qingyuan began to order. Qin Sheng did not have any taboos, so he let Zhu Qingyuan order whatever he wanted. When the dishes started to be served, Qin Sheng also finished the call. Seeing his expression, Zhu Qingyuan knew what was going on. He smiled and said, "Did you get scolded? You dare not do this in the future." Qin Sheng smiled bitterly. Small Aunt was really a little unhappy. She said that old madam had told her that Qin Sheng was back. She had been waiting for Qin Sheng's call and was going to ask Qin Sheng to eat at home. Who knew that Qin Sheng had returned to Beijing and did not call her? How could she not be angry? Qin Sheng could not talk about what happened last night, so he tried to explain to Small Aunt that he was in a hurry this time. Originally, he wanted to give grandmother a surprise and then find time to meet Small Aunt. He did not expect that he had something to do in Beijing, so he ran back early in the morning and was busy until just now. After Qin Sheng explained again and again, Zhu Qingyuan finally calmed down. She said that she would come to Beijing tomorrow and let Qin Sheng treat her to a meal. Qin Sheng readily agreed, and this matter was finally over. "If it were not for your reminder, Small Aunt would have come tomorrow to criticize me," Qin Sheng said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Zhu Qingyuan was surprised and said, "Small Aunt is coming to Beijing tomorrow." Yes, she said that she had something to deal with in Beijing and decided to come at the last minute. "I will pick her up at the airport," Qin Sheng explained. However, it was estimated that Small Aunt would not live in the Sihiyuan, even if there was no one in the Sihiyuan. After all, there were too many grievances between the two families and many conflicts had not been solved. Zhu Qingyuan said thoughtfully, "It's a pity that I will go back to Jiangsu tomorrow morning. Otherwise, I can still have dinner with you in the evening." Qin Sheng smiled and joked, "Cousin, you are in charge of politics now. There are many more important things to worry about. You will have plenty of opportunities after dinner." "That's true," Zhu Qingyuan said calmly. The two of them did not intend to drink. They only ordered 2 glasses of freshly squeezed juice and ate the meal unhurriedly. Then they talked about the trivial things in the family. Zhu Qingyuan must have something to ask Qin Sheng today. Qin Sheng was also waiting for his cousin to say something. Zhu Qingyuan said casually, Qin Sheng, I heard that you have become a director of the Chang'an department. This road is not easy. You should be more careful in the future. Qin Sheng raised his head slightly and said, Cousin, you already know? Zhu Qingyuan continued, Your uncle said that. Although I have reservations about it, this is your choice, and we will respect it. However, the water in Siju City is deep. Now is a special period. If you become a director at this time, I am afraid that you will be the target of public criticism. So you should be more careful. Qin Sheng said thoughtfully, Cousin, I know. Zhu Qingyuan said thoughtfully, You don't have to guess what I want. I just want to have dinner with you and have a casual chat. We are relatives, and there is no need to be so hypocritical. Since you are in this position, many people may take the initiative to approach you. So you should be careful when making friends. If you have trouble or something you're not sure about, you can call your brother Feng Yuan or me. At least we have been in this circle for many years. Zhu Qingyuan said casually, I also heard about what happened in the hotel during the Spring Festival. Don't take those people seriously, and don't be afraid of them. You will know who is stronger when you fight. Qin Sheng was a little confused and did not understand what Zhu Qingyuan meant by these words. After all, it had been a long time. He looked at Zhu Qingyuan with some doubts. Zhu Qingyuan said slowly, I won't keep you guessing. I heard some rumors that some people may use you as a breakthrough. You should be careful during this period. If you're really bullied, don't worry too much. As your uncle said, you are not only a member of the Qin family, but also a member of the Zhu family. If someone dares to bully the Qin family, they may not dare to bully the Zhu family. Do you understand? Qin Sheng did not understand, but he still nodded. After all, Zhu Qingyuan's last words were so domineering. The Qin family was in trouble, but the Zhu family was not. If someone dares to bully the Qin family, they may not dare to bully the Zhu family. Zhu Qingyuan smiled and sighed with emotion. Let's eat. I have to go back early today, or your cousin-in-law will have a problem. This is the trouble of a married man. After dinner, Zhu Qingyuan took a taxi home. His wife and children were in Beijing. He was working in Jiangsu alone and could only come back when he was free or from a meeting. In fact, no matter which path one chose in life, he would give up and pay something. There is nothing easy in the world of adults, and there is nothing smooth in the world of winners. After walking out of the restaurant, Qin Sheng realized why his cousin said these words. First, his cousin wanted him to be careful, which coincided with what the old man had said in the morning. Second, he wanted to tell him not to worry and be afraid in case of trouble, and that they would support him. Qin Sheng smiled knowingly. After all, blood was thicker than water. His cousin was considerate. Qin Sheng was ready to go back to Hadian to have a rest. He would go to class early tomorrow morning, and it seemed that it was the old man's class. Of course, Qin Sheng did not dare to ask for leave. However, when he was about to go back, he received a call that he had not contacted for a long time. This made Qin Sheng very surprised and a bit of a headache. After all, this was all his fault. Sooner or later, he would have to pay it back. This call was from Song Jiqiu. Since Qin Sheng left Qingdao before the Spring Festival, Song Jiqiu and Qin Sheng had not contacted each other. After returning to the Qin family, Qin Sheng was in a mess, and he had no time to contact Song Jiqiu. Song Jiqiu called him because of other things. Moreover, she also had her pride. Since Qin Sheng did not contact her, she naturally did not intend to contact him. She wanted to see who could last until the end. Obviously, she lost in the end. At this time, she was eating in a restaurant. Maybe because she had drunk some wine, she remembered that Qin Sheng was also in Beijing now. So, she subconsciously dialed Qin Sheng's phone number. Song Jiqiu, who was dizzy, said half-truthfully, I drank too much and didn't bring any money with me. My boss won't let me go. I don't know anyone in Beijing. Come and save me. No matter whether what Song Jiqiu said was true or not, she had helped Qin Sheng a lot. Even if they were just ordinary friends, Qin Sheng should go over and meet her. Moreover, they had already gone beyond ordinary friendship. Consequently, Qin Sheng frowned and asked, Where are you? After Song Jiqiu told him the name of the restaurant, Qin Sheng said that he would come right away. Then he hung up the phone and went to Wang Jing. Chapter 528. Begging for monthly tickets. Begging for monthly tickets. This was a famous restaurant in Wangjing with a good environment and a good reputation. There were many good wines collected by the boss. Of course, the prices were not cheap. Ordinary people could not afford to enjoy them. Only the gold-collar workers and executives here could enjoy them. Song Jiqiu, who had just arrived in Beijing in the evening, asked her cousin to have dinner here. Of course, this place was recommended by her friend. She was not very familiar with Beijing. She would come here several times a year or on business trips. Compared with Beijing, she preferred the climate and environment of Tsingtao, facing the sea and blooming flowers. Song Jiqiu was the focus wherever she went. Otherwise, Qinsheng would not have been attracted by her at that time. However, she was not the only focus tonight. Her cousin, who was sitting opposite her, was also a woman whom Song Jiqiu envied. Of course, there were also several beautiful women in the restaurant. There were always beautiful women in high-end places. Have you finished your call? The woman sitting opposite Song Jiqiu laughed. The woman was dressed simply, but it could not hide her temperament. A beautiful woman with good temperament would be charming no matter what she wore. Song Jiqiu drank more than half a bottle of red wine, inexplicably, and felt dizzy. She had just talked about love with her cousin, so she called the man while she was drunk. In fact, with her capacity for liquor, this little bit of red wine did not have much effect on her. Maybe she had something on her mind or took the initiative to get drunk, so she became like this. Song Jiqiu, whose eyes were blurred, tilted her head and shook the red wine glass in her hand. She looked at her cousin, who was sitting opposite her, through the red wine glass. She muttered, "Sister, do you like any man?" The woman smiled and shook her head. "No, I don't like many people. Maybe I am cold in nature. I don't like others, and I don't want to be liked by others." "Sister, this is the first time I have heard you say such rebellious words." Song Jiqiu burst into laughter. A famous lady in Tsingtao behaved like this. Many people will be shocked. The woman said thoughtfully, "Jiqiu, sometimes I envy you." The woman said thoughtfully, "Jiqiu, actually, I envy you sometimes. At least you have the courage to love and hate. I heard about what happened to you that year. You were willing to get engaged to a man you had only known for a short period of time. Not everyone has the courage to do that. Based on my understanding of you, you really liked that man. Unfortunately, that man ran away from you in the end. I can only say that he was not worthy of you. Sister, even you make fun of me. They all think I'm crazy, but I know what I want. They're not me, so how could they know me?" Song Jiqiu pouted and acted coquettishly. She looked like a vixen. Not far away, several men who had been staring at them couldn't help themselves. The woman shook her head and replied, "I'm not making fun of you. I just admire you. But I still like him." Song Jiqiu drank up the red wine in her glass, leaned against the sofa, and said with a self-mocking smile. The woman was somewhat puzzled as she said, "You haven't let go of him yet. It's been a few years. Who is this person who called me today? Is he your backup? It's not good for you to be so depraved." "Sister, am I that kind of woman? I won't be depraved. It's not like I don't know what those stinky men are thinking." Song Jiqiu snorted as if she had been bullied by that man from the beginning to the end. The woman was even more curious as she asked, "Then who is this man?" Song Jiqiu didn't want to talk about Qinsheng anymore. Anyway, she would meet him in a while. So she muttered casually, "Sister, let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. Why are you still not married? You don't even have a boyfriend. Men are getting more and more popular, but women are not." The woman took a sip of red wine. She was not a good drinker and didn't like to drink. She almost never touched a drop of wine. It was just that her cousin was in a bad mood today, so she accompanied her to drink 2 glasses. Her cousin drank most of the wine. The woman let out a long sigh as she said, "I don't know. I'll make the best of it." She didn't want to think about these trivial things. However, she inexplicably thought of that man and the seemingly ridiculous engagement. The 2 sisters chatted casually, talking about their past stories and good times, and thinking about their future in love. In the past, they spent a lot of time together every year. After they grew up, The number of times they met each other every year could be counted on one's fingers. Song Jiqiu was busy with the family business, and this woman also had her own things to do. Sometimes it was not good to grow up. However, children always shouted that they had grown up, while adults always wanted to go back to the past. Many things in life seem to be paradoxes and besieged. Only after experiencing it could one know what was better. When Qin Sheng arrived at the restaurant, it was already 10 o'clock. At this time, the restaurant was still very lively. Many men and women were talking about love at the bar in the middle of the restaurant. After Qin Sheng came in, he began to look for Song Jiqiu. He didn't know whether Song Jiqiu was really drunk or something else. It had been almost an hour since he set off, but this woman didn't even call him. If he hadn't been really worried about her, he would have gone home and slept. After looking for several times, Qin Sheng finally found Song Jiqiu, who was lying on the table and staring at the wine glass in a daze. It seemed that she was really drunk. However, she was not alone. Sitting opposite her was a friend. However, this friend was staring out of the window in a daze, and Qin Sheng couldn't see her face clearly. Qin Sheng walked over slowly with Chong Baji. Neither Song Jiqiu nor the woman who was in a daze by the window noticed him. It was not until Qin Sheng approached them that he complained, "You'd better not drink too much when you are out." Song Jiqiu, who was thinking about the time when she first met Qin Sheng, heard this familiar voice. Instantly, a bright smile bloomed on her face. She tilted her head, looked at Qin Sheng, and said, "I thought you wouldn't come." The woman, who had been staring out of the window, heard the voice and turned around subconsciously. When she saw Qin Sheng, her old acquaintance, standing there, she was stunned for a moment. It didn't occur to her that she would meet Qin Sheng here. It didn't occur to her that the man Song Jiqiu called was Qin Sheng. She just asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" Qin Sheng was about to say something to Song Jiqiu. No matter how hard she tried to think things through, she shouldn't try to get drunk by drinking. This was not Tsingtao. It didn't occur to him that Song Jiqiu's friend would say something like this to him. Qin Sheng raised his head and looked at the woman. The expression on his face was the same as that woman's expression when she saw him. He asked almost the same words, "Why are you here?" This woman was none other than Song Ruyu, who had many stories with Qin Sheng. She was a gentleman who was as gentle as jade. Qin Sheng liked the name Song Ruyu very much. He felt that this name was very suitable for Song Ruyu's temperament. Then it was Song Jiqiu's turn to be shocked. She looked at her cousin Song Ruyu and then at her old lover Qin Sheng. She asked in a daze, "Do you know each other?" Their relationship was a bit messy. They didn't know each other's information. Qin Sheng didn't know the relationship between Song Jiqiu and Song Ruyu. Song Jiqiu didn't know how Song Ruyu knew Qin Sheng. Theoretically, they shouldn't have any interaction. Song Ruyu didn't know the relationship between Qin Sheng and Song Jiqiu. She thought that Qin Sheng came over to hit on her. Song Ruyu took the initiative to say with a smile, "Yes, I know him. He and I are friends. What about you?" From her cousin's expression and tone, Song Jiqiu seemed to have guessed something. She couldn't help but feel confused. Did Qin Sheng and her cousin have a story? Song Jiqiu was sometimes very smart. If she pointed out the relationship between Qin Sheng and her cousin, the atmosphere would be somewhat awkward. So Song Jiqiu smiled sweetly and said, "Sister, it didn't occur to me that you and Qin Sheng are friends. We're also friends. He's my boyfriend." Speaking of this, Song Jiqiu stood up and held Qin Sheng's arm on purpose. She leaned her head on Qin Sheng's shoulder, acting like a timid and helpless little girl. No one knew what was going on with this half-true and half-false routine. Song Ruyu was somewhat confused. She didn't have any experience in relationships. When she thought of Song Jiqiu's tone on the phone just now, it seemed to be true. However, Song Ruyu was also confused about how Song Jiqiu and Qin Sheng met. At this time, Qin Sheng was the only one who was embarrassed. He didn't know what Song Jiqiu was up to. He didn't know the relationship between them. Qin Sheng had to mutter, "What's the relationship between you and Song Jiqiu?" Song Jiqiu smiled and explained, "This is my cousin." Qin Sheng suddenly saw the light. No wonder they both had the surname Song. In this case, the Song family in Shandong and the Song family in Beijing should be collateral relatives. This also explained why the Song family in Shandong had such a powerful background. It turned out that the Song family in Beijing was behind them. The relationship between the three of them was finally made clear. However, Song Ryu was still kept in the dark. After all, Song Jiqiu and Qin Sheng were not just male best friends. They were sleeping together. The man who had run away from the wedding was Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng didn't want to be entangled in this topic. He had to change the topic in a hurry. Didn't you drink too much? Didn't you forget your wallet? Didn't you ask me to ransom you? Song Jiqiu was smart indeed. She dealt with it easily as she said, I'm just testing our relationship. You didn't contact me during this period. I thought first, young Master Qin, now that you've grown up, you don't care about ordinary people like us anymore. Qin Sheng didn't know how to respond to this sharp-tongued and mean coquettish girl. Seeing Qin Sheng's embarrassed look, Song Ryu covered her mouth and smiled. It didn't occur to her that Song Jiqiu could do this. Qin Sheng didn't bother to pay attention to her. He had to say, First Miss Song, I'm here now. What else can I do for you? Go and pay the bill. Otherwise, why did I call you here? Song Jiqiu had nothing to fear. After all, Qin Sheng had owed her too much. For Song Jiqiu, compared with the harm Qin Sheng had done to her, this was not too much at all. Qin Sheng was a little angry, but he didn't dare to vent his anger. He could only endure this girl's temper. After all, it was all his fault. He couldn't blame others. In the end, he went to pay the bill happily. Song Ryu walked over, held Song Jiqiu's arm, and said, Jiqiu, is it a little too much? No matter how good your friend is, you can't treat him like this. Song Jiqiu squinted and said with a smile, Sister, he won't be angry. This is how we get along. Chapter 529. When would he do it? Song Ryu didn't think too much about it. She knew that Qin Sheng had been wandering outside before he returned to the Qin family. Maybe he had met Song Jiqiu at that time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have met. Song Jiqiu was afraid that her cousin would think too much, so she asked, Sister, how did you know Qin Sheng? The Qin family and the Song family have been friends for generations. We visit each other during festivals. Qin Sheng happened to come to pay a New Year's visit this year, so we got to know each other. I've only heard of him before. Song Ryu explained honestly without hiding anything. She was kind-hearted and didn't think too much, unlike her cousin who was so cunning. Song Jiqiu said thoughtfully, Oh, I see. It seems that the first young Master Qin is really a rich man. A poor loser has become a phoenix. I have to treat him well in the future. Song Ryu laughed and said, At this time, Qin Sheng had paid the bill and came back. Song Jiqiu had cheated him a lot and spent thousands of yuan. Fortunately, he had money now. If it had been before, he would have turned around and run away. He would not be a fool. When Qin Sheng came back, he saw the two beauties waiting for him. He said in a low voice, Have you paid the bill? Can we go now? Song Ryu and Song Jiqiu nodded and left with a smile. They walked in front and chatted with Qin Sheng and Chang Baji behind them, until Qin Sheng asked, Do you have a car? If you do, I'll ask the bodyguards to send you. If not, I'll send you home. Song Jiqiu sneered again. Well, first young Master Qin has bodyguards when he goes out. What a show. Her words made Qin Sheng feel uncomfortable. He knew that Song Jiqiu had a grudge against him, but she was not the old Song Jiqiu. It seemed that Song Jiqiu was different every time he met her. Qin Sheng snorted. Song Jiqiu, don't blame me for being rude if you continue to be so cynical. Rude? How can you be rude? I don't think you were polite before. Now you turn your back on me? Song Jiqiu sneered. Qin Sheng didn't know whether it was because she was drunk or she was deliberately looking for trouble. This time, Song Jiqiu was totally different from when they were in Tsingtao. Song Ryu stopped Song Jiqiu in a hurry and said, Jiqiu, stop talking. Song Jiqiu did not say much. After all, her cousin was still here. She had to figure out a way to send her away. Consequently, she said, My sister is driving. Ask the bodyguards to send her back first. Otherwise, I'm afraid that she will be scolded if she goes back late. Song Ryu frowned and said, You won't go back with me? This time, Song Jiqiu did not pretend to be crazy. Instead, She said seriously, "Sister, I will sleep in the hotel tonight. I haven't seen Qin Sheng for a long time. I want to have a good chat with him." Song Ryu looked at Qin Sheng and then at the crazy and confused Song Jiqiu. She said, Qin Sheng said in a hurry, "Ryu, I'll ask the bodyguards to send you back. I'll take good care of Jiqiu. After this, I'll send her back to the hotel safely. You don't have to worry." "All right." Song Ryu did not say much or ask anything. At this time, it was time for her to go home. Consequently, she asked the bodyguards of the Qin family to send her back happily. Qin Sheng and Song Jiqiu watched Song Ryu get in the car and leave. They did not turn around until they could not see her shadow anymore. At this time, Qin Sheng suddenly slapped Song Jiqiu's perky buttocks, which could be regarded as a punishment for Song Jiqiu's presumptuous behavior. Anyway, there were no outsiders here, so he did not have to be afraid of anything. Song Jiqiu turned around slowly. It was unknown when her eyes had turned red. She stared at Qin Sheng with tears in her eyes. The look in her eyes contained some hidden bitterness, tenderness, complexity, and contradiction. Qin Sheng was somewhat at a loss. He did not use much strength to pinch the eldest miss of the Song family. Could it be that the eldest miss of the Song family was so soft and tender that he hurt her? Qin Sheng replied in a hurry, regretting his impulsiveness just now. "Don't cry. I'll apologize to you, okay?" Song Jiqiu bit her lower lip tightly and said in a trembling voice, "Even if we are not lovers, we are still friends. You have been away for so long. Why didn't you even call me? You know how worried I was about you. I know you have a girlfriend, but I don't have anything extravagant. As long as you tell me that everything is fine with you, I will be relieved. But why didn't you call me? Are you afraid that I won't be able to get married and will pester you?" Song Jiqiu's words made Qin Sheng somewhat speechless. It seemed that what she said was true. When they had been in Tsingtao, they had talked about everything. It could be said that they had parted on good terms. However, after what had happened to the Qin family, Qin Sheng did not have time to care about anything else and forgot to contact Song Jiqiu. When he remembered it, he did not want to disturb Song Jiqiu's life anymore. Qin Sheng had to say in this way as he said, "I'm sorry. It's my fault." Song Jiqiu was not willing to forgive him. She said, "I'm sorry. You can only say sorry every time. Do you think sorry is omnipotent? You can have a clear conscience after saying sorry. But what about others?" Qin Sheng had a headache. Sometimes he was indeed a little selfish, but sometimes there was a reason for his love. It was not that he did not want to contact Song Jiqiu. It was just that at that time, Qin Sheng's life was completely in a mess. He could not even manage himself. How could he care about others? Qin Sheng sighed and said, "I don't want to explain anything. It's all my fault. Don't cry. I can do whatever you want." Song Jiqiu wiped away her tears gently and sneered. "I didn't say that you can't explain. You can explain whatever you want, as long as you give me a reasonable reason." Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Many things had passed. Now that he had finished his mental journey, there was no need to recall it again. Now he had more important things to deal with. At this time, Song Jiqiu suddenly hugged Qin Sheng without any warning and kissed him with ease. She was very devoted to kissing him. Qin Sheng was somewhat dumbfounded. However, he did not know how to push Song Jiqiu away at the moment. Moreover, men also had desires. Chang Baji and the bodyguards of the Qin family all turned around sensibly. Only a few onlookers passing by stared at them occasionally. In an instant, Qin Sheng suddenly thought of the current situation. If Song Jiqiu got closer to him, he would be in more danger. It was possible that someone would threaten him with Song Jiqiu. So after thinking of this, Qin Sheng directly pushed Song Jiqiu away and said, "Jiqiu, calm down. We have already let it go, haven't we? You should have a life of your own. I can't give you happiness." After Song Jiqiu was pushed away, she stared at Qin Sheng in a self-mocking manner and smiled bitterly. She felt like a fool. Was she being a bitch? She, Song Jiqiu, could get any man she wanted. Why did she insist on going about things the wrong way for this man? Can't you give it to me? You just don't want to. Besides, when did I ask you to give me happiness? Can't we just have a one-night stand and break up at dawn? Don't you like it very much? Song Jiqiu became mean again. She was not only humiliating Qin Sheng, but also humiliating herself. Qin Sheng felt very upset when he heard this. It was all the sins he had done in the past. So he held Song Jiqiu in his arms. Song Jiqiu resisted fiercely, but Qin Sheng did not let her go. He said gently, "Never humiliate yourself. You don't feel sorry for me, but I do." Upon hearing this, Song Jiqiu stopped struggling. She just leaned her head on Qin Sheng's shoulder and sobbed in a low voice. All of a sudden, she felt that she probably did not know Qin Sheng at all. She said that Qin Sheng was selfish. Was she not selfish? She only cared about her own feelings and had never asked Qin Sheng anything. For example, every time she saw Qin Sheng, she felt that he was very tired. Alas, maybe they were not destined to be together. "Take me back to the hotel," Song Jiqiu murmured. On the way back to the hotel, it was silent in the car. Song Jiqiu did not say anything. She just leaned against the window and stared blankly outside. She also felt that Qin Sheng was being unreasonable. This was not what she liked, so she should calm down. Even if she wanted to fight for Qin Sheng, she had to figure out what kind of person Qin Sheng was. When the car stopped at the entrance of the hotel, Song Jiqiu came to her senses. She stared at Qin Sheng affectionately and leaned over to kiss his lips. Then she stood up and said, "Good night." Qin Sheng saw Song Jiqiu into the hotel and then left. On his way, he had met a lot of women who were very kind to him. However, they were not destined to be together in the end. He used to think that once he turned around, it would be the rest of his life. Later, he found that as long as he was willing and worked hard, he could hold them tightly. There would be no more joys and sorrows. Later, Qin Sheng figured out these things. So when he met Lin Su, he held her tightly. He did not want to miss her again. He would rather be smashed than be afraid. However, if there was an afterlife, Qin Sheng was willing to hold her tightly the first time he met her. He would never let her go. A night of spring rain woke him up. When Qin Sheng woke up, it was still drizzling outside. It was almost the Qingming festival. It seemed that it rained every year during the Qingming festival. Although he had not been here for a long time, it was still clean and tidy. The kitchen was complete. Qin Sheng cooked some millet porridge, and Chang Baji went downstairs to buy some steamed buns and side dishes. After eating, they went to Tsinghua University. Of course, the bodyguards did not follow Qin Sheng to Tsinghua University. Qin Sheng did not believe that anyone dared to take risks in the highest university in the country. So only Chang Baji followed him. The students on the road were all in a hurry. They could only see various kinds of umbrellas coming and going. The sky was also a little gloomy because of the dark clouds, making everyone feel a little depressed. However, the air was much better than usual. Qin Sheng walked at a moderate pace. Before he reached the teaching building, someone patted him from behind. Qin Sheng turned around and saw that Han Su was grinning at him. Before Qin Sheng could say anything, Han Su said sneakily, "Lao Qin, I've done what you said. When will we take action? When will we do it?" Qin Sheng frowned and asked. Han Su frowned and said, "The two bastards last time. Don't tell me you have forgotten them. We must get revenge for them." Chapter 530. Advancing together with the country, it was not until he heard Han Su's words that Qin Sheng understood what had happened. When he had met Han Su last time, Han Su had told him who the mastermind behind the scene was. Then he and Han Su had discussed how to get back at him. However, in the past few days, a lot of things had happened in the Qin family. Of course, Qin Sheng had no time to care about this matter. Uncle Gong's son probably had no time to worry about it. However, he did not expect that Han Su had been taking action. Qin Sheng could not help sighing with emotion. This guy was really insidious and ruthless. In order to take revenge, he had been investigating until now. Anyway, he would not let this matter go. "Oh, it turns out to be this matter. Tell me what you should do." Qin Sheng came to his senses and asked. He somewhat admired Han Su's ability. He guessed that the Han family's background was not small. Han Su held an umbrella and said proudly, "After we talked last time, I thought that since you have made such a plan, I have nothing to be afraid of. After all, those two grandsons dare to play tricks on us. Isn't it more efficient for two people to act together? I asked someone to keep an eye on those two grandsons, figure out their life track, and see if there was any loophole to catch. I really found it. I'm afraid that those two grandsons thought that no one dared to deal with them, so they were so careless. Qin asked curiously, "What loophole? Why are you so anxious?" "It's raining heavily outside. Let's go in first," Han Su said proudly. Tsinghua University in the spring rain had a special charm. Qin wanted to wait for the arrival of summer. He estimated that at that time, it would be even more beautiful. It was a pity that the advanced course was about to end. At that time, he could only work hard to take the postgraduate entrance examination and then come to Tsinghua University to enjoy college life. When Qin and Han Su came in, other students had already arrived. The rain did not dampen everyone's enthusiasm for learning, and no one asked for leave. These elites who were sitting here and talking and laughing at the moment seemed to be very casual, who was not busy in daily life and who did not have all kinds of pressure. Han Su was so carefree. After sitting down, he began to play the game of PUBG. Qin opened his notebook and sorted out the homework assigned by the professor. Wei sat next to Qin quietly and asked in a low voice, "How is it going at home?" Qin frowned slightly and said, "I don't need to worry about these things." Wei said thoughtfully, "In fact, many of the students in this advanced course come from powerful families. If you are willing to take the initiative, there may be a chance to cooperate. At least you can pull some strings. Later, let the elders push it. Let's talk about it later." "I can't talk now," Qin muttered casually. He also knew that Wei was doing this out of kindness. It could also be regarded as a kind of investment, and he could gain something from it. Wei didn't say anything more. He thought that Qin had declined his suggestion. Maybe it was just as Qin had said. He didn't have a right to speak in the Chang group, but it would happen sooner or later. Wei heard that Qin had become a director of the Chang and group, which was very important. After the two classes in the morning, Han Su had asked Qin to have lunch together. This guy had already recovered from what had happened last time and began to harm the senior and junior sisters of Tsinghua University again. However, Qin did not go to eat with him. Instead, he accompanied an old man for a walk in Tsinghua Garden. Qin and the old man each held an umbrella, strolling in the rain. Chang Baji followed them from a distance. He didn't follow them too closely, in case it was too abrupt or made the old man feel disgusted. The old man was none other than the old professor who taught Qin and the others. He was also an independent director of the Chang and group. Of course, the old man also had a series of reputation, which didn't matter. However, when he chose to be an independent director of the Chang and group, it did shock many people. Until now, many people didn't understand the old man's decision. The old man asked calmly, "How do you feel? Do you feel the pressure?" The old man asked calmly. He had been a scholar all his life and had taught many students. He could be said to have students all over the world. The old man didn't have many pursuits. Money, reputation, power, and so on seemed to be unimportant at his age. Moreover, he already had what he should have. Now he just wanted to teach a few more students and cultivate a few more talents, which could be regarded as the last bit of his strength for this country. Qin didn't know how to answer. He felt the pressure. It was just the beginning, and he hadn't started yet. It was obvious that he couldn't bear the heavy responsibility. He didn't feel the pressure. This position was so important. It seemed that he didn't attach much importance to it. The old man found it funny and said, "You're like him. You like to weigh the pros and cons before making a decision. Sometimes it's good because you're steady. Sometimes it's not good because you're too tired." Qin Chang'an was not his student. He should be regarded as a friend, but this friend took a detour. Qin smiled bitterly and was speechless. How could he talk freely with these big shots, who knew what they wanted to ask and what they wanted to know? It would be bad if he said something wrong, so it was better not to talk. But if he didn't talk, the atmosphere would be a little too awkward. Don't you want to ask something or say something? You can't possibly accompany an old man like me all the way, right? Other people definitely won't miss such an opportunity. Or is it because I'm too boring? The old professor said helplessly. He thought it would be very casual and fun to chat with them, but he didn't expect it to be the opposite. This was not the result he wanted. Qin Sheng thought for a while and felt that he really couldn't miss such an opportunity. Many people wanted to meet the old man, but they didn't have the chance. So he directly threw out an important topic and said calmly, "Mr. Wu, can the Chang group get through this difficulty this time?" Qin Sheng finally opened his mouth, but this question seemed a little too direct and too big. The crisis of the Chang and group was not only a crisis of the Chang and group, but also the future of entrepreneurs like the Chang and group who had gained a lot of capital dividends during the 40 years of reform and opening up. After all, each of them had more or less original sins, but their contributions to the country and society couldn't be erased. Mr. Wu did have the right to speak in this aspect. He had been studying this topic, especially in recent years. A large number of capital enterprises sank or ran aground. Why do they do this? What should they do? Mr. Wu shook his head and said, "Qin Sheng, what do you think is a difficulty? In fact, there is no difficulty. Crises are often accompanied by dangers and opportunities. From one point of view, it may be a danger, but from another point of view, it may be an opportunity. If you can only see the danger but not the opportunity, then you are in the wrong direction. Even if you get through this difficulty, in fact, you will miss a lot of opportunities." Old Wu's answer was a bit ambiguous, but there was nothing wrong with what he said. The onlooker sees more clearly than the onlooker. However, what he said might not be understood by others. Those people only cared about the gains and losses in the moment and would not look at the long-term benefits. Qin Sheng didn't ask further. Instead, he asked, "Mr. Wu, what should the Chang'an group do?" In the 40 years of reform and opening up, there have been many national dividends. The success of any enterprise or entrepreneur is closely related to the national policy. Every policy may create many successful enterprises and entrepreneurs. So what you need to remember is that the success of most enterprises and entrepreneurs is actually not only due to their personal efforts, but also because of the trend of the general environment. As long as they follow the national strategy and seize every policy dividend, the enterprise will become bigger and bigger. However, many enterprises and entrepreneurs will fall into a mistake when they develop to a certain extent. They always want to be big, but not fail. Many of their decisions are against the national strategy or policy, and they don't know how to make progress together with the people and the country. They only care about their own interests and forget how they succeed. Let some people get rich first and then lead the others. This is absolutely not an empty talk. If you can't do it, what do you think the successful entrepreneurs and enterprises are in front of the country? Mr. Wu said to Qin Sheng after careful consideration. This was also what he often said recently. A successful enterprise must advance together with the country. Only when the country gets better and better, the enterprise will become stronger and stronger. Mr. Wu's words made Qin Sheng think of many things. Coupled with what Mr. Wu had said before, Qin Sheng seemed to understand the situation and future of the Chang'an Group. Why did so many companies like the Chang'an Group get into trouble in the past 2 years? Many people say that they collude with the government or transfer of benefits, etc. In fact, these are not important. Which company doesn't have such original sins? What's important is that they took a detour, especially many outstanding enterprises. They were originally going well, but they took a detour. The country has been talking about avoiding the false and entering the real. The financial system will eventually serve the real economy. The stronger the real economy is, the more benefits the financial system will get, and the more powerful the financial enterprises will become. If the financial system keeps letting the capital flow without entering the real economy, it will be a challenge to the national policy. Who can protect you then? This is the real mistake they are making. If they don't realize this mistake, all the enterprises will be in trouble, Old Wu said earnestly. If Qin Sheng really succeeded in taking over the class monitor, and he hoped that Qin Sheng could change the direction of this aircraft carrier so that it could sail on the right route and fight for this country. Qin Sheng was not a good person. Qin Sheng listened carefully with a serious face. What Mr. Wu said today really surprised him and made him understand a lot of things. He also knew what to do next. These are all useful information. Mr. Wu, I understand. Thank you. Qin Sheng suddenly turned around and bowed respectfully to Mr. Wu. It was precisely because of people like Mr. Wu that this country could create a miracle in a short period of time and develop to the extent it was today. Mr. Wu did not refuse. He just patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, "Son, you are the future and backbone of this country. We are old, and the next step is up to you. I hope you won't let us down." Qin Sheng nodded heavily. This was a form of inheritance and trust. Qin Sheng finally understood why this seemingly ordinary advanced course could invite so many big shots. It was not because of these people's identities and backgrounds, but because of the responsibilities these people would bear in the future. Chapter 531. Bad news. Thanks to all the tycoons who have tipped these days. Thanks to Lao Meng, Lao Lin, Briquette, Uncle Salted Fish, and other brothers and sisters who have tipped these days. I've checked the comments in the circle and found some bugs. One is that the names of Song Jichio's father and Song Ryu are the same. I've already corrected them. Also, Qin Sheng called Zhu Qingwen Andy, and Zhu Qingyuan also called her Annie. I checked it later and made sure that he called her Andy. Mr. Wu said what he wanted to say to Qin Sheng. He didn't need to be afraid of anything, even though he was ready to resign as an independent director of the Chang'an department. Everyone's position was different, and everyone's responsibilities were different. Since Qin Sheng was going to sit in that position in the future, he had to take on more responsibilities. This responsibility was not only for the Qin family or the whole interest group, but also for the country. Many things seemed to be big and empty, such as the so-called national responsibility. When it was specific to each individual, many people might think that it had nothing to do with them, and so on. However, this country was made up of many ordinary people. If everyone thought so, then the country would definitely not have unity. Ordinary people could think so, but people who had vested interests in this country couldn't think so. They had to take responsibility. That was why the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University had been promoting the cultivation of more second generations of enterprises. At the level of Tsinghua University, they didn't want them to bring anything to Tsinghua University, but to bring more things to this country. Walking in the rain, Qin Sheng learned a lot, especially the last sentence of the old man. In many foreign countries, capital might determine politics, such as those so-called democratic countries. But in China, it was always politics that determined capital. He had to keep this in mind. Qin Sheng deeply benefited from the old man's words, so he could do a lot of things in the future. The first thing he wanted to do was to borrow some books from the library, and then contact Song Ryu to learn about some policies. Finally, he wanted to learn about the strategies and plans of the Chang and department and so on. After talking about these things, Qin Sheng sent the old man back to his residence in Tsinghua Garden. The old man had the habit of taking a lunch break every day, which was unchangeable. He had already tried his best to reduce too many social activities, except for those that were meaningful and couldn't be avoided. He spent most of his time attending classes at Tsinghua University or the party school. In the afternoon class, Qin Sheng was very active and devoted. He took the initiative to raise his hand and ask a lot of questions. This made Han Su, who only cared about playing games and most of the time, directly threw the homework to the company's secretary, quite surprised. Did he take the wrong medicine? After class, Qin Sheng and Han Su were not in a hurry to leave. Han Su whispered in Qin Sheng's ear, "Shall we take action tonight?" Qin Sheng said meaningfully, "It's better to take revenge as soon as possible. You can find a place to wait for me. I'll meet you immediately after I go home." Of course, he still had to get rid of the tail that might be following him, in case someone had something on him. This kind of thing naturally could not be exposed to the public. Therefore, Qin Sheng had already told Chang Baji about it. After coming out of Tsinghua University, Qin Sheng went straight to the community where he lived in Hadian. Chang Baji had already sent someone to arrange a car to wait for them in the underground garage. Without stopping, they directly got into the car and left the community. After that, the bodyguards of the Qin family drove the original car directly to the Sihiyuan of the Qin family under the escort of another car. Qin Sheng's trick was just a preventive measure. He did not know whether someone was following him or not. However, It was not a bad thing to be careful. No one could guarantee it. The place that Qin Sheng and Han Su had agreed to meet was on a street outside the north gate of Tsinghua University. Han Su drove an inconspicuous Honda CR-V and waited for Qin Sheng there. He did not call anyone else. After all, he did not trust anyone around him. Qin Sheng parked his car behind the Honda CR-V. Then, he and Chang Baji quietly got into Han Su's car. Han Su said half-jokingly, "I thought you would not come." Qin Sheng said happily, "How can I not come? Without me, this game will be boring." He really wanted to see the face of that playboy with a bloody nose and swollen face. Han Su did not talk nonsense. He directly drove to the destination. There, two men who worked for their family were watching that man. They had been watching him for many days. They had taken hundreds of photos. They recorded all the places that the man had been and who he had seen these days. Between Gu Yongning and Xue Ku, Han Su finally chose Xue Ku. After all, Xue Ku was the main culprit. What happened that night was ordered by Xue Ku. Gu Yongning estimated that he was just a follower. Besides, if they wanted to play, they should play big. Didn't Xue Ku have a strong background? This was the entrance of the Chinese Academy of Drama, located in the alley of the Northern Military Department. At this time, the Honda CR-V had been replaced by Chang Baji. Chang Baji finally found a parking space. Qin Sheng and Han Su were eating snacks in the back, which were all bought by Han Su. This guy had been to the Chinese Academy of Drama many times before, so he was quite familiar with this place. They had been waiting for more than an hour. Xue Ku had not come out from the Chinese Academy of Drama, which made Han Su a little impatient. He muttered, "Damn it, why hasn't he come out yet? Is he going to fight in the dormitory? Don't worry, it's still early. Let's wait and see. If we can't stop him today, we can do it another day. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge." Qin Sheng, who was drinking juice, said disapprovingly. He knew this better than anyone else. Han Su, who was a little bored and annoyed, muttered, "I can't be a gentleman. I'm more like a villain. A villain never takes revenge overnight. Today we must stop this bastard." Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then he would continue to wait. He would come out eventually. The information from Han Su's side was that Xue Ku had taken a fancy to a freshman beauty in the Chinese Academy of Drama. Every Friday, he would drive this beauty home. The beauty was from Beijing and lived in an alley somewhere in the Xiqing district. He had already explored the terrain. It was definitely a good place to make a move. Today, Xue Ku came to the Chinese Academy of Drama on time. He drove alone without anyone else. He was afraid of being known. Besides, it was raining today, so Han Su felt it was very suitable. After waiting for about half an hour, Xue Ku finally came out with the beauty. Qin Sheng and Han Su did not notice it. It was the two men from the Han family who told them, because they were staring at the place where Xue Ku parked his car. Chang Baji immediately drove the car and followed them. They kept a distance from the Han family's car so that they would not be discovered. After all, the two men were more professional than them. Han Su could not wait any longer. However, things did not go as smoothly as they thought, because Xue Ku took the beauty directly to a boutique hotel, which made Qin Sheng and Han Su a little stunned. Han Su swore again. What the F asterisk CK? He can't help it. Damn it. Today's work is in vain. Chang Baji had to park the car on the road opposite the hotel and wait. Qin Sheng squinted and said, "Let's wait a little longer. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't come out before 12 o'clock, we will go back to our homes. Let's find another chance." Han Su let out a long sigh and said, "That's the only way." However, Xue Ku did not let them wait too long. He came out about an hour later, which made Qin Sheng and Han Su widen their eyes again. Han Su laughed and said, "No way. This big brother is so fast. It will take at least half an hour to check in, take off his clothes, take a bath, and do that. He came out so soon. Can he do it?" Qin Sheng also did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was Xue Ku drained by wine and women? He was such a good-for-nothing. Could he satisfy this beauty? However, this had nothing to do with them. They could not say that they would do it if he could not do it. After making fun of Xue Ku for a while, Qin Sheng and the others followed Xue Ku's car again. This time, it seemed that they were going to send the beauty home. It was said that the beauty's parents were strict, and she had to go home every week. Therefore, Shweka did not dare to take the beauty to spend the night outside. Moreover, Shweka also had a family. Han-su frowned and said, "There should be no problem this time. Should we go and prepare in advance?" Qin nodded thoughtfully and said, "Okay." Therefore, Han-su called the two men and asked them to follow closely and not get lost. They went to prepare in advance, which would save them a lot of trouble when the time came. More than 10 minutes later, Shweka drove the new beauty to an alley. At this time, it was still raining outside. In addition, it was very late. Therefore, there were not many pedestrians on the road. Shweka parked the car outside the alley. The alley was relatively narrow, and it was not very convenient to pass through. Therefore, he parked the car here every time. Holding an umbrella, Shweka said in a low voice, "Xiao-yi, go to bed early tonight. I will come and pick you up tomorrow morning." The long-haired beauty, called Xiao-yi, held Shweka's arm tightly, like a little bird. Originally, she did not have a good impression of Shweka, a second-generation rich man. However, she could not resist Shweka's pestering. In the end, she surrendered and admitted defeat. However, Shweka was really good to her. He also helped her a lot and bought a lot of things for her. She thought that she had found her Mr. Right. In fact, it was just a game. What couldn't a man do in front of a beauty? Xiao-yi raised her head and looked at Shweka. Her eyes were full of tenderness. When she smiled, her eyes became crescent moons, which was very beautiful. She said lightly, "Okay, I know. Go to bed early, lazy pig." After hearing that, Shweka enjoyed it very much. He put his hand restlessly on Xiao-yi's butt. Xiao-yi glared at Shweka and snorted. She let him do whatever he wanted. Anyway, she was already Shweka's woman. Soon, they arrived at the door. Xiao-yi stopped and said, "Here we are." Shweka chuckled and said, "Okay, go in." Xiao-yi said reluctantly, "I can't bear to leave you." Shweka replied with a smile, "Me too." Hearing this, Xiao-yi could not help but tiptoe and kiss Shweka. This kiss lasted for a long time. After a long time, Xiao-yi finally left. It was not until Shweka saw that Xiao-yi went in that he turned around and walked back. Shweka smiled disdainfully in his heart and said, "What kind of pure campus belle is she? She was still taken by me." Others told him that was very difficult and many people had hit a wall. However, Shweka had seen countless women. It was not difficult for him at all. Shweka, who was holding an umbrella, was thinking about how to brag to his friends later. He did not notice that two men were walking toward him. Both of them were holding umbrellas. In addition, this was the narrowest part of the alley, so neither of them could get through. Shweka stopped subconsciously. The sudden appearance of the two men shocked him. However, he did not think much about it. He did not think about asking others to make way for him first. After all, he was not so rude. Therefore, he took the initiative to turn sideways and was ready to make way for the two men in front of him. However, the two men's umbrellas were low, so Shweka could not see their faces. Chapter 532. Crazy and crazy. Although Han-su usually did not like to study and only liked to play games, when he really encountered something, he was very smart. Not only did he consider it thoroughly, but he was also very cautious. The whole thing was planned and arranged by him. Qin only needed to follow him to carry it out. In fact, since Han-su knew that the masterminds behind the scenes were Shweka and Gu Yongning, he had been secretly investigating them, waiting for a chance to take revenge. From inquiring about Shweka's information to finding out Shweka's life track, finally finding a suitable place to take action, and so on, including the monitoring arrangement of this place and the escape route. These were all within the scope of control. Even if it was Qin who did it, it was estimated that it would not be more than this. Shweka wanted to discuss Qin at the beginning, avoiding the strong point and using Han-su as a target. However, he did not expect that Han-su was not an ordinary person. Inexplicably, he kicked an iron plate. So today's situation was destined. Moreover, Shweka took the initiative to give him the opportunity. If he did not hook up with this Chinese opera student, he would not have such a perfect opportunity. On a rainy night, they met on a narrow road. Shweka definitely did not expect that he would have such an encounter. It was also his fault that he was distracted. If he had not been distracted, he would have found that there was something wrong with the two men coming toward him. He could turn around and run back, but then he would have found that a man had blocked the exit. Qin Sheng and Han Su could be said to be fully armed, with hats, masks, and umbrellas. These were all prepared by Han Su. Shweka could not recognize who it was at all, so he said that Han Su was quite cunning. Qin Sheng kicked first. After all, compared with Han Su, his speed and explosive power were more advantageous. He directly kicked Shweka to the wall, not giving Shweka a chance to react at all. When Shweka realized that something was wrong, he had no chance. He fell heavily on the ground, clutching his abdomen and struggling painfully on the ground. Han Su followed closely. It was unknown whether it was intentional or a freak accident, but he directly kicked Shweka in the face. Han Su did not save his strength in this kick. After all, he had prepared for this moment for a long time, so he had to vent the resentment in his heart. Shweka originally wanted to try his best to see who it was, so that he would know who to take revenge on later. But when he was about to raise his head, Han Su's kick followed. However, even if he raised his head, it was completely useless. After all, Qin Sheng and Han Su were fully armed. With a buzzing sound, Shweka's vision went black, and he fainted in an instant. His resistance was a bit too poor. He had probably overexerted himself in the hotel just now, causing his body to be a little weak. Han Su didn't know that Shweka had fainted. Seeing that Shweka didn't respond, he kicked him a few times in a row. Every kick landed on Shweka's body. If Shweka were awake, he would definitely grimace in pain. However, there was no reaction now. Han Su really vented his anger this time. Seeing that Shweka had fainted, Qin Sheng was afraid that Han Su had used too much strength and had an accident. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable. The backfire would make them pay a heavy price. Qin Sheng pulled Han Su back and said in a low voice, "He has already fainted. It's enough to stop." Han Su said reluctantly, "That's it? Old Qin, it can't be. We've been tossing and turning for so long, and now it's over in a hurry? Isn't it too easy for this kid?" "A yang not to him." One Su Sheng. "But yang how? Su. XT. Sheng. If you don't offend me, I won't offend you. If you offend me, I will kill you." Qin Sheng said cruelly, "Just don't kill him." Hearing this, Han Su nodded with a smile and said, "Don't worry." Then he turned around and punched Shweka's face a few times. This was the only chance. If he missed it, he would definitely pay them back with interest. Since they had achieved their purpose, Qin Sheng did not bother to do anything. He just watched Han Su abuse Shweka. This guy was so unlucky to run into Han Su and him. However, Qin Sheng was not worried at all. Even if he did not provoke Shweka, Shweka would still make trouble for him. It was possible that he would take advantage of Qin Sheng and Shweka. So this was just the beginning. Not long after, Han Su felt that it was enough, so he stopped. After all, their time was limited, and they didn't want to be found out by others. If they were found out, they would have to play for real, although there were people watching at the intersection outside. "We should go." Qin Sheng kept staring at the time. When the time was up, he said to Han Su. Han Su stood up and said, "Yes, but I still feel a little angry." Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Then how do you feel angry? You can't kill him. At that time, your family will also be unlucky. So it's enough." Han Su squinted and thought for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled very playfully and said, "I won't kill him, but I think it will be more interesting." "Ow?" Qin Sheng asked curiously. He felt that Han Su looked playful, but he was actually very cunning. Fortunately, they were friends and not enemies. Otherwise, he would have a headache. Han Su said happily, "For example, take off his clothes." Qin Sheng was stunned. What the F*** CK? He could play like this. This Han Su was too cunning. Before Qin Sheng came to his senses, Han Su had already begun to take off Shweka's clothes. He was quite fast. In a few seconds, Shweka was only left with a pair of underwear. Qin Sheng was really afraid that this guy would take off Shweka's underwear. What was more unexpected was that after taking off Shweka's clothes, Han Su crumpled Shue's clothes and threw them directly on the roof of the house next door. Qin Sheng was shocked again. 4 words could be used to describe Han Su as heartless. Another 4 words could be used to describe Han Su's behavior. However, Qin Sheng liked Han Su, who had no bottom line. He was very kind to his friends and very cruel to his enemies. However, if Shueko woke up, he would probably die of anger. Today was destined to be a painful experience that Shueko did not want to recall in his life. Based on his identity and temper, he did not dare to make this matter public. Otherwise, it would only be known by the whole city. At that time, he would really lose face. Therefore, he could only investigate it secretly. After finishing these things, Han Su said happily, "Let's call it a day. We can leave and find a place to celebrate." After Qin Sheng and Han Su made sure that there was no one in the alley outside, they left according to the predetermined escape route. Soon, they completely disappeared in the rainy night. The rain came just in time. Shueku, who was naked and covered with wounds, was lying on the ground. A rich playboy with a strong background was played like this. It was really tragic. Han Su and Qin Sheng did not celebrate in the end. After walking to the street, they went their separate ways. They would never leave any clues for Shueku, so that he could not find out who had set him up no matter how hard he tried. Moreover, this matter would become his nightmare. Han Su went to fool around with his friends. No one followed him or made trouble for him. He could do what he should do, as long as it was normal. Qin Sheng had to be careful. He directly drove back to the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. Even if he was acting, he had to play the whole show. Qin Sheng would never make such a mistake. Qin Sheng's car directly drove into the Sihiyuan. Soon, another car drove out of the Sihiyuan. This show was finally over. Zhao Anji and Qin Jing both came back in the evening. At this time, they were drinking tea and listening to the rain by the window on the second floor. They were somewhat comfortable. After seeing Qin Sheng, Qin Jing hurriedly ran over and said, "Brother, why did you come back so late? Why are your clothes wet?" Qin Chang'an was not here, so Zhao Anji had to worry about Qin Sheng. At this time, she was also waiting for Qin Sheng to come home, so she said with some hidden bitterness, "Sheng, don't go out these days. You need to recover from your injury first." "Auntie, I made you worry. After class today, I met with my classmates. I will go home early in the future," Qin Sheng said in a low voice. Only those who cared about him would worry about him, so Qin Sheng had to care about their feelings. Zhao Anji smiled and said, "Go change your clothes first. Don't catch a cold." After a while, Qin Sheng finished changing his clothes and came out. Zhao Anji and Qin Jing were still drinking tea there. Qin Jing hurriedly poured a cup of tea for Qin Sheng and then sat next to him obediently. "Sheng, your father's not in Beijing recently. If you have nothing to do, you could go to the company with me more often. No matter what others think, you are destined to take over in the future. It is better to get in touch with him earlier," Zhao Anji said casually. Of course, she was willing to see Qin Sheng take over, which could also ensure the Qin family's control over the Chang'an school. Qin Sheng thought for a moment and said, "I will listen to you. Auntie, after class tomorrow afternoon, I have nothing to do. I will go to the company with you, Auntie. I also want to know something." Zhao Anji nodded, feeling very gratified. Fortunately, Qin Sheng was not the kind of domineering rich playboy. Otherwise, she was afraid that he would not listen to her, a so-called aunt. After all, apart from this layer of relationship, they had not known each other for long. Qin Sheng suddenly thought of something and said in a hurry, "Auntie, tomorrow at noon, my small aunt will come over for lunch at home. Are you there?" Zhu Qingwen was originally going to come over today, but Qin Sheng had to go to class, and she happened to have something else to do. So she changed it to tomorrow at noon. Zhu Qingwen took the initiative to come to the Sihiyuan of the Qin family for lunch, but maybe she also knew that Qin Chang'an was not there. This would also be the first time she stepped into the gate of the Qin family's Sihiyuan. Moreover, it was a critical period, which meant a lot to many people. Of course, Zhao Anji knew Zhu Qingwen. She had seen her many times before, but that was a very long time ago. She had taken her back 20 years ago. She also knew that Zhu Qingwen's husband had a very high status now, and he might go further. At that time, the Zhu family would go to another level, which would be envied by everyone. However, the relationship between the Qin family and the Zhu family had been so bad, of course, they would not have a good impression of her. Moreover, she was not clear about Zhu Qingwen's intention of coming to the Qin family. So Zhao Anji was not sure. She said, "Is this appropriate?" Qin Sheng did not think so much. He just felt that it was an ordinary meal. Moreover, he also wanted to ease the relationship between the two families. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Well, I will arrange it later," Zhao Anji said very seriously. After talking about these things, it was already very late. They said goodnight to each other and went back to their rooms to rest. They would deal with tomorrow's things tomorrow. Chapter 533. Get to the bottom of it. What happened tonight would probably be a nightmare for Xue Ke for the rest of his life. He was beaten black and blue, and his whole body was covered with scars. It was too horrible to look at. When had young Master Xue ever suffered such a loss? It had always been young Master Xue who bullied others. These should be said to be Han Su's masterpieces. Tonight, this guy completely vented his resentment at that time and got back both the principal and the interest. It also showed Qin Sheng the dark side of this guy. It was true that one should not judge a book by its cover. Poor Xue was lying naked on the ground in the rain. If he continued to be drenched like this, he would definitely not die, but he would definitely get seriously ill. It was not guaranteed that he would be left with a permanent disease. Fortunately, he was not so unlucky that he did not stay here in the rain. Not long after Qin Sheng and Han Su left, a nearby resident passed by. He found Xue Ke and immediately called the police. This big brother came back late from a party with his friends. He was drunk and swayed when he walked. While walking, the big brother suddenly saw a strong naked man lying under his feet. He was almost scared to death in the middle of the night, and his soul almost came out of his body. Fortunately, the big brother was brave. After coming to his senses, he squatted down uneasily to check if the naked man was still breathing. Only then did he confirm that he was not dead. However, no matter how he called, the man did not wake up. In addition, the man's nose and face were swollen. The big brother was afraid that there would be an accident, so he hurriedly called the police and the ambulance. It did not take long for the police to arrive. They were very fast. They were also very surprised to encounter such a situation, so they took photos to collect evidence according to the procedure. However, they still could not wake Xue Ke up. Logically speaking, Xue Ke was only knocked out and should be fine. However, no one knew what happened. In the end, they could only wait until the ambulance arrived before they sent Xue Ke to the hospital. After being sent to the hospital, Xue Ke woke up not long after. He looked at everything in front of him calmly and did not panic. Perhaps this was the calmness of a son of a family. At this time, the police naturally wanted to ask some questions. When the police and the big brother told Xue Ke how he was discovered, Xue Ke's expression suddenly changed. He was so angry that his face turned green. He flew into a rage and smashed a lot of things. The two patrolmen didn't know Xue Ke's identity. They just followed the rules and asked Xue Ke if he remembered what had happened. Xue Ke wasn't in the mood to pay attention to them. He borrowed a mobile phone and made several calls. After that, he lay on the bed in a daze. He didn't say anything when the police asked him. However, whether it was the medical staff in the ward, the patrolman, or the drunk man, everyone could tell from Xue Ke's phone call that this man's identity was not simple. Not everyone could imitate his domineering manner. About half an hour later, 3 men and a woman walked into the ward. During this period, the 2 patrolmen suddenly received a call and left. The call was from their immediate superior. Before leaving, they looked at Xue Ke meaningfully. As for the big brother, who had sobered up at this time, he still stayed in the ward. "Young master." The 3 men bowed their heads respectfully and shouted. After seeing Xue Ke's appearance, the woman's eyes instantly turned red. She hurriedly ran to Xue Ke and sat in front of the bed, holding Xue Ke's hand and crying. At this time, Xue Ke was in a very bad mood. He scolded angrily. "Why are you crying? I'm not King dead yet." The woman was frightened by Shueku and immediately stopped crying. She had to sit there obediently. She was Shueku's confidant in the bar last time. Of course, Shueku couldn't let his wife know what had happened tonight. Otherwise, it would be really shameful. At this time, the big brother who found Shueku was very uneasy in his heart. He regretted getting involved in this matter. At that time, he should have directly hung up as if it had nothing to do with him and run away quickly. Otherwise, these things would not have happened now. The man did not dare to breathe loudly, but he still secretly glanced at the woman beside Shueku. The woman was so beautiful that she was even more beautiful than the female stars on TV. If he had a wife like her, he would dote on her. How about he scold her? Shueku stared at the big brother, and his expression changed slightly. It was not because the strong man secretly glanced at his woman, but because he thought that this matter must not be known by outsiders. At present, except for the two patrolmen and this man, no one else knew about it. He must completely seal the matter, which meant to seal their mouths. This was not a difficult thing for him. Zhao Chong, you take him out first, Shueku said to a young man wearing glasses who looked like a bookworm. The man named Zhao Chong had followed Shueku for several years. Of course, he knew what was going on. He immediately waved his hand and signaled the big brother to leave with him. He did not want to stay here for another second and could not wait to leave as soon as possible. After they left, Shueku ordered again, Wu Yao, I've already told the people in Xiqing District. You go and handle this matter. Seal the two patrolmen's mouths for me. And in the hospital, if any news is leaked, I will hold you responsible. Young master, I understand. Wu Yao, who was wearing a suit and leather shoes, nodded heavily. Shueku then gritted his teeth and said, Also, I don't care what connections and resources you use. You must find out who on earth is. Don't let go of any clues. I will definitely make them pay 10 times, 100 times the price. I will do it now. Wu Yao left with the order. If he did it well, his internal status would naturally be improved. But if he did not do it well, Shueku would definitely not spare him. After Wu Yao left, in the ward, in addition to Shueku and his confidant, there was only a man who looked a little older. The man's name was Sun Shi. In fact, his real age was only 36 or 37, but from his appearance, he seemed to be 46 or 47. However, his status in Shueku's side was definitely not low. Young master, how is it? Shall we go to another hospital? Sun Shi, who was dressed very simply, asked in a low voice. When it came to Zhao Chong and Wu Yao, Shueku would casually order them around. However, when it came to this man, Shueku was very respectful. Putting aside the fact that the Shui family was indebted to him, the relationship between them over the years was not something that outsiders could understand. Shueku squinted and said, Brother, it's okay. It's just a slight concussion and some superficial wounds. As long as I rest for a while, I will be fine. It's just that I can't see anyone during this period, or else the whole city will know. He had gradually calmed down. Perhaps it was because he had always been polite to Sun Shi, which could be seen from a way he called Sun Shi brother. There were no outsiders in the ward, and Shueku's confidant could also be trusted. Sun Shi did not have any taboos and said bluntly, Did you really not see clearly who it was at that time? I only remember that it was two men. I don't know anything else. It was raining tonight, and they were holding umbrellas, wearing hats and masks. Obviously, they came prepared. Not to mention that I fainted before I had time to see them. Even if I had time, I might not be able to recognize them. Shueku tried to recall the scene at that time, but apart from these, there was nothing else, so he was annoyed and started to have a dull headache. The confidant quickly comforted him. Don't think about it. Let's recover first. Shueku waved his hand to indicate that he was fine. He snorted and said, Damn it. When have I, Shueku, suffered such a loss? How dare they play me, Shueku? Let's wait and see who will play the other to death in the end. Sun Shi did not care about this. He just said faintly, Think about it. Do you have any suspects? As long as there are any clues, we can also get to the bottom of it. This is Beijing, not a foreign place. Brother, there are a lot of people who don't like me. Even if you let me think about it, I can't think of any. But I will focus on a few names. You can check them carefully, Shueku said in a deep voice. Sun sure nodded silently. These were all things that they had to do. Shueko only needed to recover now. After all, what happened tonight had a great impact on Shueko. Shueko was such a proud person. Not only was he set up, but he was also stripped naked. This was such a humiliation. How could he let it go? Then you should recover first. When you recover, we will talk about other things first, Sun Sure said in a low voice. Shueko said thoughtfully, as for my family, tell them that I am going on a business trip. It may be a month before I come back. Don't let them know about this. Also, keep things under control. You know these? I won't say more. Sun Sure nodded silently and said, don't worry. After everyone left, Shueko closed his eyes and was ready to rest. But in his mind, he was still thinking about who the mastermind was. Who had such courage? After a night of wind and rain, the rain stopped at dawn, but the sky was still covered with dark clouds. Shueko had moved out of this ordinary hospital and went to a more high-end private hospital so that he would not be disturbed by outsiders. It was already 2 or 3 o'clock when Han Su finished last night. He was sleeping soundly now. Anyway, he would go to class this afternoon. Qin Shin got up early. After getting up, he first sent someone to inquire about Shueko through Gongsun. At the same time, he kept an eye on the movements of the Shuef family. He drank tea and read for the whole morning. Zhao Anji went out with Qin Jing. It was estimated that his small aunt would arrive at 11:30, so he was not in a hurry. After listening to the old professor's words that day, Qin Sheng's mind became clearer. However, he still needed to have a good talk with the old man. Before that, he had asked Lu Yong to send some information about the Chong in school. He had to understand the direction of the Chong in school and, secondly, the internal forces of the Chong in school. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to make any progress in the future. He could not think that he could be fearless in the Chong in school because he was Qin Chang'an's son. Otherwise, he would die sooner or later. Qin Chang'an might not be able to completely control the Chong in school. He just maintained a subtle relationship with it, let alone Qin Sheng. Chapter 534. Chapter 535. Chapter 535. One sentence. The status of the Zhao family and the Zhu family was similar. Zhao Anji and Zhu Qinghuan married into the Qin family one after another, which showed the status of the Qin family at that time. It was just that the Qin family took a different route. Unfortunately, in the course of history, the Qin family was almost eliminated. Fortunately, Qin Chang'an turned the tide, so that the Qin family did not completely disappear in the long river of history. Zhao Anji and Zhu Qingwen. In terms of status back then, Zhao Anji was, of course, more famous than Zhu Qingwen. At that time, Qin Changxing was a proud son of heaven among that group of young people. Many big shots had high hopes for him, and his career had been smooth sailing. Zhao Anji married Qin Changxing, which naturally made many people envious. It was a real match made in heaven, and the two families could be regarded as a strong alliance. Zhu Qingwen was just the youngest daughter of the Zhu family. Not to mention that she had been a good girl since she was young. She was also very young at that time and did not have much social activities. Even though she later married that man, no one was too optimistic about her. After all, the center of power at that time was in Siju City. No matter how rich Jiangzhe was, they did not have much influence. Moreover, that man had always been unknown. Looking at it now, Zhao Anji was far inferior to Zhu Qingwen. The Zhao family, which had been low-key and forbearing, began to replace the old and the new, and they did not have much say. After Qin Changxing went through the storm of the Qin family, he cut off his way out, saw through the world of mortals, and escaped to Buddhism. Zhao Anji went far away to Canada, away from the center of the storm. As for Zhu Qingwen, after a short period of dormancy, the Zhu family began to have smooth sailing. Zhu Weiguo was even more promoted, and he reached the peak of power step by step. Zhu Qingwen's husband's career also began to have smooth sailing. Every step he took was critical, and he finally reached the position he had today. Therefore, now, whether it was the Zhu family or Zhu Qingwen, they all had more confidence. The Zhao family and Zhao Anji had to be relatively low-key. After Zhao Anji and Qin Jing came back, Qin Sheng just hung up the phone. On the other side, Small Ant was already on the way and was asking for the specific location. After all, Small Ant had never been to the Qin family Sihiyuan. Zhao Anji and Qin Jing bought a lot of things. They even bought 2 sets of clothes for Qin Sheng. She handed them to Qin Sheng and said, "Try them on later and see if they suit you. They're all formal clothes. You can wear them when you go to the company." "Annie, I have a lot of clothes in my place. They were all bought by my sister. Every time she went shopping, she would buy clothes for me. There are still many that I haven't worn yet." Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. Apart from the 2 years when he went out to travel, he had never been short of clothes in the past few years. When he was young, it was Annie Wang who bought clothes for him, and the clothes were almost the same. Later, when he met Su Qin, she was also the same. She liked to buy clothes for him the most. Now that it had become more and more intense, happiness had become trouble. It could be said that he was doted on by thousands of people. Every time the women went shopping, they would buy things for him. Zhao Anji said angrily, "What your sister bought is what your sister bought. What Annie bought is what Annie bought. How can it be the same?" Qin Sheng had no choice but to accept it. He was afraid that these clothes were expensive. It seemed that in the future, he had to tell his sister and wife not to buy anything for him when they went shopping. It was a waste of money. Zhao Anji asked Yi to put all the things back in the room. Seeing that it was almost time, she asked, "When will your aunt arrive?" "She will arrive soon. She just called me to ask for the specific location," Qin Sheng replied casually. He was afraid that when his aunt saw him, she would scold him again. He was already prepared. Zhao Anji sighed and said, "I haven't seen her for so many years. We're already old." Qin Sheng quickly comforted her. "Auntie, you are still young. How can you say that you are old?" Zhao Anji smiled faintly and said nothing. No matter how others comforted her, the truth could never be changed. Yi was about to get married. She was a person with half of her body in the grave. If she did not feel that she was old, she would be too ignorant. A few minutes later, Zhu Qingwen's car finally arrived at the gate of the Qin family Sihiyuan. The bodyguard came in to inform Qin Sheng and confirm his identity. Qin Sheng, Zhao Anji, and Qin Jing hurried out to welcome Zhu Qingwen in the front yard. Zhu Qingwen's car directly drove into the Sihiyuan. After entering the gate, she saw the Qin family standing under the screen wall. She knew that Qin Chang'an had gone to Shenzhen. She thought that only Qin Sheng was here, but she did not expect that there were 2 other women. Zhu Qingwen frowned slightly as she looked at the 2 women. She subconsciously recognized Zhao Anji, which made her very shocked. She didn't expect Zhao Anji to be here as well. It had been many years since she last saw her. She had changed a little too much. If it weren't for her appearance, she wouldn't have believed that this was Zhao Anji. As for the young girl next to her, Zhu Qingwen didn't know her. The Zhu family had never had much contact with the Qin family. In the past, they only cared about Qin Ran. Now there was Qin Sheng. As for the others, they just did not care about them. Of course, they knew something about Qin Chang'an, but they did not ask or care about other things. So they did not know that Zhao Anji had returned to China, nor did they know that the beautiful girl next to her was Zhao Anji and Qin Changxing's daughter. After the car stopped, the Qin family's bodyguard quickly opened the door. Zhu Qingwen, who was graceful and charming, slowly got out of the car. Maybe because she had been a teacher in the university, Zhu Qingwen had a more scholarly smell, which made people feel like bathing in the spring breeze and very comfortable. She was dressed very delicately, not that ostentatious. She wore a simple gray chiffon top and black pants, and low-heeled shoes that were not very high. Qin Sheng quickly walked over to help Zhu Qingwen, who had just gotten out of the car, and said, "Small Ant, you are so beautiful today. You look very energetic. Is there any good news?" Zhu Qingwen stared at Qin Sheng and said, "You are glib. No wonder Ran said that you are getting more and more talkative. How come you have changed so much in such a short time?" Since he had adapted to this identity, Qin Sheng had to integrate into the new life. He could not keep a distance from everyone all the time. If others felt uncomfortable, he would feel uncomfortable too. Qin Sheng chuckled and said, "Small ant, which Qin Sheng do you like?" Zhu Qingwen did not say anything. Of course, she would not answer Qin Sheng's question, which she already knew the answer to. Instead, she looked at Zhao Anji, who had been sizing her up with a faint smile, and said politely, "Sister, it's been a long time. I did not expect that you still remember me. I thought you had forgotten me. After all, so many years have passed. We are old." Zhao Anji took 2 steps forward, and Zhu Qingwen took the initiative to hold her hand. The 2 old friends who had not seen each other for many years exchanged greetings politely and reminisced about the past. The sky was clear after the rain, and the cool breeze was blowing gently. Old friends did not regret not meeting each other later. But it was not that simple. Zhu Qingwen smiled and said, "How could I forget you? I just did not expect to see you again. I heard that you have been in Canada. I don't know when you came back. Ran and Sheng, but didn't tell me." "Not long ago," Zhao Anji said casually. Although Zhu Qingwen's status was higher than hers, she would not be in a weak position in front of Zhu Qingwen. Qin Sheng quickly interrupted. "Auntie, small ant, let's go in and talk. Lunch is ready. I guess you are all hungry." Zhu Qingwen and Zhao Anji said at the same time. Okay. Let's go in and talk while eating. There is so much to talk about." Zhu Qingwen did not care about Qin Jing, thinking that she was a relative of the Qin family. Qin Jing was too embarrassed to say hello to this aunt, so she followed Qin Sheng inside. When they arrived at the restaurant, Zhu Qingwen saw the beauty sitting next to Zhao Anji. She was a little surprised and asked, "Sure, who is this little beauty?" Zhu Qingwen had seen Qin Jing in Shanghai long ago, but that day Zhao Anji asked her out for dinner. She happened to be busy that night, so she missed the opportunity. Otherwise, she would have known in advance that Zhao Anji was back and that she had a daughter. Of course, Qin Sheng did not answer. This question should not be answered by him, but by Zhao Anji. Zhao Anji said with a smile, "Qingwen, you see, I forgot to introduce you. This is my daughter, Qin Jing. Her nickname is Yaya." "Your daughter?" Zhu Qingwen was a little shocked. Her name was Qin Jing, which meant that she was the daughter of Qin Chongqing and Zhao Anji. But everyone knew that Zhao Anji and Qin Chongqing had never had a daughter. Everyone knew what happened later. Qin Chongqing became a monk, and Zhao Anji went to Canada. How could they have a daughter? Could it be that Zhao Anji had a child with someone else in Canada and deliberately took the surname Qin, or found someone with the surname Qin? Qin Jing stood up obediently and said, "Hello, Annie." Zhu Qingwen did not agree. She felt that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. She looked at Zhao Anji, waiting for a reasonable explanation. If she was her daughter with someone else, then she should not have stepped into the Qin family Sihiyuan. Zhao Anji smiled and said, "Sister, don't be surprised. Everyone will be surprised when they hear this news. Let me explain it to you." She was not surprised at Zhu Qingwen's surprise. Zhao Anji explained in very simple words. Zhu Qingwen understood what was going on. She did not expect that there was such a story behind it. As for whether it was true or not, Qin Chang'an had already confirmed his identity. No one could fool Qin Chang'an. However, after hearing that Zhao Anji was going to settle in Beijing with Qin Jing, Zhu Qingwen felt that this matter was not simple. Why did Zhao Anji bring her daughter back at the most critical time? Could it be that there was something unknown about it? She had been busy recently and did not pay attention to the Qin family. She only knew that Sheng seemed to have entered the board of directors of the Chong and department. She still had reservations about this. She was prepared to talk to Sheng when she met him. It seemed that she needed to inquire about it later. Zhu Qingwen sighed and said, "I see." She did not say too much. After all, she was not interested in the Qin family's affairs. At this time, Qin Sheng had already asked the servants to serve the dishes. Zhu Qingwen asked meaningfully, "Sister, why did you suddenly decide to come back and not leave?" Zhao Anji smiled faintly and said, "I'm old and have to return to my roots. Yaya is grown up and should go back to her hometown. Moreover, the Qin family is in such a crisis. If I don't come back and Qin Chang'an falls, who will support the Qin family? Will it be like what happened more than 20 years ago?" Although Zhao Anji said so, Zhu Qingwen did not think so. Others might think it was good, but Zhu Qingwen did not think so. She said straightforwardly, if Qin Chang'an falls, there are still Qin Sheng and Qin Ran. Chapter 535. Unhappy breakup. Zhu Qingwen had a high status in the Zhu family now. Both the old lady and the younger generation liked her very much. They were willing to ask her for help on many things. First of all, Zhu Qingwen was a university professor. She had unique views on many things, and she was a smooth and fair person. Second, Zhu Qingwen attached great importance to family ties. She was in charge of the family gatherings of the Zhu family, and everyone trusted her very much. Zhu Qingwen attached great importance to the children of the Zhu family, so she cared about the interests of the children first, followed by other things. Therefore, Zhu Qingwen was very surprised that Zhao Anji suddenly came back and planned to stay. She was somewhat suspicious of her motives, and she brought back a daughter she had never heard of. It had been so many years. Why didn't she come back before? Now she suddenly came back at such a special time, especially after Qin Sheng came back. Zhu Qingwen and Zhao Anji had only met a few times, and they had no feelings for each other, so it didn't matter what they said. These two children might be deceived by you. After all, you are Qin Chongqing's nominal wife, and they call you Annie. But I, Zhu Qingwen, will not take you seriously. Moreover, I don't have a good impression of other people in the Qin family. If it weren't for Sheng and Ran, do you think I would be willing to come to the Qin family? Zhu Qingwen's words were obviously not good, and everyone could hear the tension. Qin Sheng looked a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that his small aunt would suddenly say such a thing. He was somewhat embarrassed and didn't know what to say. At this time, even Yaya felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. At the same time, she also heard the deeper meaning in Zhu Qingwen's words, let alone Zhao Anji, who was used to seeing the world. Zhao Anji was the eldest daughter-in-law of the Qin family, and also the eldest daughter of the Zhao family. Moreover, few people could control her temper in the past. Even though the status of the Zhao family was not good now, and she had been away from the center of power for many years, she didn't intend to let it go. She asked directly, Sister, I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean? Sister Zhao, do you still not understand my words? My words shouldn't be so profound, right? You should understand. Zhu Qingwen smiled lightly, but there was a hint of ridicule in her smile. To everyone's surprise, the harmonious atmosphere suddenly became tense. Aunt Shui, who was standing at the door, was the housekeeper of the Qin family Sihiyuan. Basically, as long as Gongsun was not here, she was in charge of all the affairs in the Sihiyuan. Having been a Qin family for many years, Aunt Shui was good at observing people's words and expressions. Thus, when she felt the atmosphere was not right, she immediately asked the servants who were serving the dishes to leave, and then she took charge of serving the dishes herself. Zhao Anji sneered as she said, Qingwen, it seems that you are not here with good intentions today. I was wondering why you had not entered the gate of the Qin family Sihiyuan for so many years. Why did you suddenly visit today? It turns out that you are here for me. At this time, Qin Sheng really did not know what to say. He felt that no matter what he said, he would be embarrassed. If he helped his small aunt, Big Aunt would definitely be unhappy. They would meet each other frequently in the future, not to mention Yaya. However, if he helped Big Aunt, his small aunt, who loved him dearly, would be sad. She was really good to him and his sister. Therefore, Qin Sheng did not care about anything. Anyway, whatever he said was wrong. He simply did not say anything and let the two women fight tit for tat. He winked at Yaya, indicating that she should not care about it and that they should just lower their heads and eat their food. Sister Zhao, if I hadn't seen you today, I would not have known that you were back. To be honest, if it were not for Sheng and Ran, I would rather not come to the Qin family Sihiyuan for the rest of my life. However, at least for so many years, I have been thinking about these two kids. I don't want to talk about Ran. After my sister passed away, Qin Chang'an was so busy that our Zhu family basically took care of him. Not to mention Sheng. Our Zhu family has made great efforts to find Sheng. What about you? Zhu Qingwen's words could be said to be ruthless. She directly stated the facts and reasoned with Zhao Anji, which made her speechless. After saying this, Zhu Qingwen lowered her head and took a sip of tea. Zhao Anji had a temper, but Zhu Qingwen had a temper too. However, at this age, she had long put away her temper and character. In daily life, when she was in contact with those people outside, she was just playing along. In front of her family, she was happy and happy from the bottom of her heart, so she rarely got angry. Of course, Zhao Anji would not admit defeat like this. She was not a person who would admit defeat. However, before she could say anything, Zhu Qingwen said aggressively again, "More than 20 years ago, when the Qin family was in the most difficult time, you went to Canada. You just left and did not care about anything. However, how did the Qin family clean up the mess? Qin Chang'an took care of it bit by bit. Later, when the Qin family was a little better, you got in touch with the Qin family again. During those years, you probably did not even make a phone call. Later, when the Qin family was getting better and better, you got in touch with the Qin family more and more often, which was understandable. However, in this special period, you came back with your daughter. Don't you make people suspicious? Sheng has come back, and Qin Chang'an has fallen, so he will take over. It seems that it is not the turn of an outsider to intervene." Zhu Qingwen knew that Zhao Anji was in the wrong, so she knew what to say. These words might be a little hurtful, but it was related to Sheng and Ran, so Zhu Qingwen had no scruples about hurting people. As soon as Zhu Qingwen finished speaking, Zhao Anji directly retorted, "It seems that it is not the turn of an outsider to intervene, right?" Zhu Qingwen snorted and said, "Sister Zhao, your words are really humorous. Our Zhu family doesn't care about these trifles of the Qin family. As long as Sheng, and Ran are safe, everything will be fine. However, if someone dares to bully Sheng, and Ran, they really have to ask our Zhu family. I don't believe that anyone dares to look down on our Zhu family." Zhu Qingwen's words were full of confidence. The kind of aura of a big family instantly blew over. No matter how unhappy you were, the truth was the truth, and you could not refute it or do anything about it. Zhao Anji felt a little down in her heart, but she still said firmly, "What a big tone. Things are different now. The Zhu family is rich and overbearing. It's a pity that our Zhao family has declined. We don't even have the right to speak now." Zhu Qingwen squinted at Zhao Anji and said, "Sister Zhao, your words are a little sour. I dare not stop you from speaking." She was already very polite. Zhao Anji snorted and said, "Qingwen, do you mean that I came back this time to compete with Sheng and Ran for the Qin family's property? Although you are not qualified to do so, and Sheng and Ran may not think too much about it. As their aunt, I have to be on guard." Zhu Qingwen admitted without concealing. Zhao Anji said with relief, "Since you think so, I'm afraid that I can't explain it no matter what I say." "Then you think so? I can't do anything about it." Zhu Qingwen shook her head and smiled bitterly. "Then I can't do anything about it." After saying that, Zhu Qingwen directly stood up and said to Qin Sheng, who had been focusing on eating, "Sheng, I still have something to do, so I can't accompany you to eat. After these 2 days, we will go to your uncle's house for a gathering. I'll leave first." Qin Sheng was a little confused. His aunt was too direct. Obviously, she did not give him face. She did not have to go so far. They just said a few words. Qin Sheng was at a loss and said, "Aunt, let's finish the meal first. Another day." After saying that, Zhu Qingwen stood up and left. Zhao Anji picked up the teacup and said indifferently, "Qingwen, then I won't see you off. Let Sheng see you off for me." Zhu Qingwen and Zhao Anji were both proud women and had their own standpoints. Zhao Anji felt that she had given Zhu Qingwen a lot of face by going out to greet her in person. Now that Zhu Qingwen had swaggered away, it was obvious that she did not give her face. Of course, she would not accommodate Zhu Qingwen, let alone cater to her. Zhu Qingwen smiled disdainfully and then left directly. Since they could not talk anymore, it was meaningless to continue eating, leaving only each other embarrassed. This was the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. She could not let Zhao Anji go, so she had better be sensible. Qin Sheng hurried to follow her out, not forgetting to look back at his aunt awkwardly. After walking out of the yard, there were no outsiders. At this time, Qin Sheng said, "Aunt, I don't think Aunt is that kind of person. She is also doing it for the Qin family. Otherwise, she would not get involved in this mess at this time." Zhu Qingwen did not mind Qin Sheng speaking up for Zhao Anji. She just held Qin Sheng's hand and said, "Shenger, it's hard to know what's in a man's heart. In the face of such a huge benefit, anyone would take the risk. You haven't been here for so many years, so you have no idea how deep the water in Sijio City is. Otherwise, your father would be in deep trouble. What's more, your aunt is not easy to deal with. Don't think too highly of her." "Aunt, do you have a misunderstanding with Aunt?" Qin Sheng asked confusedly. Zhu Qingwen chuckled and said, "How can we have a misunderstanding? I'm just thinking for you and your sister. Otherwise, we will not know that someone is working together. But don't worry, our Zhu family will not allow outsiders to mess around. Originally, I wanted to have a chat with you this time. I didn't want you to get involved in this, but seeing that you're afraid of trouble, I can only settle for the next best thing. Perhaps it would be a different scene if I were to escort you." "Aunt." Qin Sheng suddenly had a lot to say. Zhu Qingwen stopped him and said, "Don't say anything. Go back to eat. I'll leave first. I'll call you when your uncle comes back another day." Qin Sheng could only swallow what he wanted to say. He watched Aunt Shui get in the car and leave. Then he was in a daze at the door for a while. After a while, he turned around and walked back. When he returned to the dining room, Zhao Anji had already asked Aunt Shui to continue to serve the dishes. She and Yaya were eating with relish, as if nothing had happened. "Aunt, my aunt may have been a little too direct just now. Don't take it to heart. Aunt is actually very good. She may have misunderstood you." Qin Sheng took the initiative to explain for his aunt. It seemed that he did not want the two of them to have a conflict. Zhao Anji chuckled and said, "Sheng, sit down and eat. I'm not a stingy person. I know your aunt is doing this for the good of you and your sister. I can see that she loves you very much, so I can understand. These misunderstandings can be solved later." Qin Sheng nodded doubtfully and then sat down to eat. After drinking a glass of juice, Zhao Anji suddenly looked up and asked, "Sure, I haven't been here for so many years. I didn't take care of your sister or find you. I didn't do anything for the Qin family. Do you have a problem with me?" Qin Sheng was a little confused by his aunt's words. For a moment, he did not know how to answer. He could only look at her in a daze. Zhao Anji sighed and said, "It's okay. Let's eat." Chapter 536. Chapter 537, taking drastic measures most of the time. Most people made decisions based on the environment they were in at that time. No one knew what would happen next. Even if they could guess something, there were too many variables. Zhao Anji never regretted the decision she made, nor did she want to explain anything to Zhu Qingwen. She didn't want to explain, and there was no need to. People who knew those things would understand. At that time, the Qin family was in a precarious situation. The old master took Qin Sheng to a faraway place. Qin Chang'an was depressed because of Zhu Qinghuan's death. Qin Changxing saw through the world of mortals and became a monk. Only she, who was pregnant, and Qin Ran, the little girl, were left in the whole Qin family. In order to protect her and Qin Changxing's child, Zhao Anji could only make such a decision, so she didn't regret it. Later, with Qin Chang'an's efforts, the Qin family stood up again. It was not that she was unwilling to come back. On the one hand, she did not want to face the unbearable past again. On the other hand, Yaya was still young. She was already familiar with life abroad. Moreover, the environment, education, and many other aspects abroad were much better than at home. Finally, there was something unknown. It was the story between her and Qin Chang'an. So Zhao Anji didn't come back. Now she chose to come back because many things had changed. Yaya had grown up. China was getting better and better. Moreover, the Qin family was in danger. Zhao Anji didn't want to be a coward like Qin Changxing. Only the people involved knew many things. If she was the woman Zhu Qingwen said, how could Qin Chang'an forgive her with his means and temper? After thinking about these things, Zhao Anji was no longer angry about Zhu Qingwen's presumptuous behavior. Although she was still in a bad mood, she could understand Zhu Qingwen's position. Everyone stood in different positions. It was a sumptuous lunch, but without the main character, it was tasteless. Zhao Anji did not eat much and left first. Without the pressure from the elders, Qin Sheng and Qin Jing felt much more relaxed. Qin Sheng didn't want to think about many things. He felt that some kinship should not be doubted. Even if there might be a situation like what Small Ant was in, at least for now, Big Ant treated him and his sister well. Qin Sheng put some food in Qin Jing's bowl. He knew what it felt like to be cared for, so he felt sorry for his sister. The Qin family would be warm with his sister and sister. Moreover, he liked this silly girl who didn't think too much. "Brother, will Mom be angry?" Qin Jing muttered in a low voice. It was not appropriate for her to interrupt when the elders were talking just now. She could only ask Qin Sheng cautiously. Qin Sheng shook his head and said, "Small Ant just did it unintentionally. Big Ant is not that petty. Let's not care about the adults' affairs." "Oh." Qin Jing nodded silently. After a while, she suddenly raised her head and asked, "Brother, will you always love me?" Qin Sheng did not know why this girl suddenly asked such a question. He did not think much about it and replied honestly, "Of course. You are such a beautiful sister. How could I not love you?" Hearing Qin Sheng's affirmative answer, Yi smiled happily. Her gloominess just now was also swept away. She was a child who was easily satisfied. After lunch, Qin Jing had nothing to do, so she insisted on following Qin Sheng to Tsinghua University. She said that she had not experienced the environment of a domestic university. Qin Sheng did not refuse her. He just smiled and teased her, saying that she, a top student from a world-class famous university, still had eyes for a domestic university. Qin Jing pulled his arm and said coquettishly, "Brother, you are making fun of me." After getting the Big Ant's consent, Qin Sheng took Qin Jing to Tsinghua University. They could not miss the 2 classes in the afternoon. After entering the campus of Tsinghua University, Qin Jing kept staring out of the window. When they arrived downstairs of the School of Economics and Management, Hansu and Wei Li happened to be chatting there. Seeing Qin Jing coming, Hansu immediately ran over to greet her attentively, which made Wei Li feel a little overshadowed, because he knew that Hansu was closer to Qin Sheng than him. Hansu said glibly, Well, I was wondering why I was in such a good mood today. It turns out that a great beauty is coming." Although Qin Sheng and Han-Su were friends, Qin Jing did not have a good impression of Han-Su. She pouted and just held Qin Sheng's arm, too lazy to pay attention to Han-Su. Han-Su was a little embarrassed. Han-Su lowered his posture and smiled bitterly. "Little sister, you have not forgiven me. I solemnly apologize to you again." Qin Jing just curled her lips and said, "I am not angry." At this time, Wei Li also walked over. Qin Sheng introduced her casually, saying that she was his sister. Then Wei Li greeted Qin Jing politely. Qin Jing was not as cold as she was to Han-Su, but responded very politely, which made Han-Su feel more embarrassed. "Brother, when are you going to class? I want to look around." Qin Jing did not like to be paid attention to. At this time, there were so many people coming and going, probably many of them were her brother's classmates. Qin Sheng looked at the time and said, "Class is about to start. I will let Lao Chang accompany you to walk around. I will go to you after class. What do you think?" Qin Jing did not pester Qin Sheng. She nodded sensibly and said, "Okay, I will wait for you." After that, Qin Jing was about to leave with Lao Chang. Han-Su was reluctant to let her go. "Little sister, anyway, I don't like to go to class. How about I accompany you to walk around? I am quite familiar with Tsinghua University." Qin Jing looked at Han-Su with a smile. Han-Su thought there was hope. Unexpectedly, Qin Jing poured cold water on him and said, "Thank you for your kindness, but no need." Han-Su looked disappointed. He could only watch Qin Jing leave. It seemed that the first impression was very important. Little sister had already been on guard against him. He was afraid that she would not forgive him in a short time. At this time, Wei Li walked over and joked, The cynical first young Master Han also suffered a setback. Your way of doing things is not good. You have to think of other ways, such as he spoke, Wei Li looked at Qin Sheng. Although he also liked beautiful women, he was already a married man. His wife's family was very powerful. It could be said that they were well matched in terms of social status. If his wife found out about this, she would definitely fall out with him. Consequently, his private life was not bad. Moreover, this was Qin Sheng's sister. He did not dare to have any ideas about her. After getting Wei Li's advice, Han Su immediately looked at Qin Sheng. What he got in return was Qin Sheng's scolding. In an instant, Han Su's heart was like dead ashes. He felt that the world was full of malice. After they arrived at the classroom, Han Su and Qin Sheng became serious instantly. Han Su asked in a low voice, "Lao Qin, is there any news from your side? That grandson is still in the hospital now." "Why? Do you know what happened after that?" Qin Sheng asked with great interest. Han Su said happily, "I sent someone to keep an eye on him. I know everything over there. That grandson is lucky. He was sent to the hospital not long after we left. Now they're mobilizing resources to find a mastermind of last night. However, it will not be our turn for a while. I guess the grandson has a lot of enemies." Qin Sheng kindly reminded him, "Han Su, we have already taken revenge. Don't do anything superfluous. Be careful not to give yourself away. At that time, we will be in trouble." "I know. I have already asked them to withdraw, unless they really come to us." Han Su nodded slightly and said. Qin Sheng said casually, "That's good. Recently, we do what we should do. Don't worry about him. Anyway, I will fight with him again sooner or later." Another idea flashed in Han Su's mind. He said, "Lao Qin, this grandson has blocked all the news. Do you think we should take the initiative to help him publicize it so that everyone knows it? I think it will be very interesting." Speaking of playing dirty, Qin Sheng had seen Han Su's tricks. This guy was really full of tricks. For Shueku, this was not only hitting him when he was down, but also taking drastic measures. However, Qin Sheng liked it. Therefore, Qin Sheng said thoughtfully, "On the premise that we can guarantee that we will not be found, I have no objection. At that time, I am afraid that it will be very lively." Han Su laughed out loud. At this time, the professor who was giving the class had already come in. He then calmed down. After the class, Qin Sheng went to meet Qin Jing and Lao Chong. At this time, they were wandering in Qinghua Garden. They promised the aunt that they would go back early, so they could not go back too late. After accompanying Qin Jing to walk in Qinghua Garden for a while, Qin Sheng took them back to the Qin family Sihiyuan. On the way back, Qin Sheng received a call from little Huzi, who was in a small village at the foot of Zhongnan Mountains. This call surprised Qin Sheng. After all, they had not contacted each other since they left the village last time. Huzi called Qin Sheng because several villagers in the village who were working in Beijing had been arrested for asking for wages. It was said that the other side had a very strong relationship. The villagers could not do anything about it. After all, they were so far away from the village, and they could do nothing about it. Not until then did they remember that Qin Sheng had said that he was in Beijing last time when he came back. When Qin Sheng came back last time, it seemed that he was doing well. Therefore, everyone wanted to ask Qin Sheng for help. They had to give it a try. Maybe it would work. However, only Huzi kept Qin Sheng's phone number, so Huzi called Qin Sheng. After listening to what had happened, Qin Sheng frowned slightly. It did not occur to him that the matter was somewhat complicated. Moreover, the other side was somewhat unreasonable, which made Qin Sheng a little angry. These villagers were very simple. They came to Beijing to work just to earn more money. It was estimated that they did not have many opportunities in the village. Otherwise, how could they go to such a far place to work? After finishing the work, they could not get any money. It was already very miserable. Now, they were actually arrested by the other side using their connections. This was a little too much. These villagers had helped Qin Sheng and the old master more or less before. It was reasonable for Qin Sheng to agree, which could be regarded as repaying their kindness. However, Qin Sheng did not agree easily. Instead, he asked Huzi to leave him the phone number of a person he could contact. He He would talk about it after he understood what had happened. After all, he could not only listen to Huzi's side of the story. Chapter 537. Two women fighting. Most people thought that Gongsun was just the housekeeper of the Qin family, who was mainly responsible for the daily affairs of Qin Chang'an and the Qin family. Only a few people knew about Gongsun's ability. Except for work, Gongsun was in charge of everything else in the Qin family. Back then, Gongsun had made great contributions to Qin Chang'an, but he, who had always been low-key, gradually retired behind the scenes. Gongsun had an extremely loyal team on his side. Several core members were carefully selected and tested by Gongsun for many years. For example, when Qin Sheng was in trouble in Shanghai last time, the boss of the two men immediately came to support them. That man was doing very well in Shanghai, but not many people knew about his relationship with the Qin family, or to be exact, with Gongsun. Those core members seemed to have left the Qin family and developed independently, but they still had the blood of the Qin family in their bones. Moreover, the Qin family had helped them a lot over the years. They were busy with their own things and looked after each other when something happened. The man in his 30s, sent by Gongsun, looked ordinary on the outside, and there was nothing special about him. He seemed to be an ordinary bodyguard of the Qin family. However, his identity was the son of a big shot who was like a fish in water. 2 years ago, he was sent to train by Gongsun. Many people felt that it was not worth it and that it was a waste of time. Only that big shot insisted on it. Qin Sheng called to Brother Wu. After explaining things, Brother Wu left. Qin Sheng was not very worried about this. He would wait until Brother Wu found out the truth. His focus now was to officially start working in the group tomorrow. In the short term, he would definitely work from 9 to 5. After all, it would take a lot of time to understand the power of the whole group. Zhao Anji, who had just come downstairs, said to Qin Sheng, "Your father will come back tomorrow morning. Then you go to the airport to pick him up." Qin Sheng was a little surprised. Isn't he going to stay for a week? Why is he back so soon? Is it because things are not going well there, or is there another reason? It's not that it's not going well. On the contrary, it's going very well. We'll talk about the details when he comes back. But I may have to go to Shenzhen for half a month, Zhao Anji said. She went to Shenzhen to take charge of the overall situation. Shenzhen was the most important place after Beijing. At that time, she still had to go to Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Of course, Qin Sheng did not know how the two elders had arranged it. He had not reached the position of decision-making, so he did not ask anything. It seemed that things had changed. Zhao Anji continued. Yaya stays in Beijing. Sheng, you take good care of your sister. Don't let outsiders bully her. This girl is too innocent. Qin Sheng nodded silently and said, Auntie, don't worry. Regarding her mother's sudden decision, Qin Jing was more or less reluctant. She could only stick to Zhao Anji and act like a spoiled child. Qin Sheng, on the other hand, went to the gym downstairs. He could exercise intermittently, but he could never give up. This was Qin Sheng's bottom line. Since high school, Qin Sheng had been going through systematic training in the gym. Coupled with the foundation he had laid down when he was young, his stamina was especially abundant, not to mention that he had persisted for so many years. Qin Sheng tossed and turned for 2 hours with aerobic exercise and strength training, until he was drenched in sweat and exhausted. In the end, he even had a match with Changbaji. The result was that he was beaten to the ground and could not get up anymore. However, Changbaji also said that Qin Sheng's strength had improved greatly, and he was much more powerful than 2 years ago. This made Qin Sheng feel very gratified. After the high-intensity training, the quality of sleep at night was naturally excellent. Qin Sheng slept until the alarm rang. After breakfast, he went to the airport with Changbaji to pick up the old man. It was said that the chairman's office had also sent someone to pick up the old man, but Qin Sheng did not contact them. In the airport VIP lounge, Qin Sheng saw the group of people from the chairman's office. There were 2 women and 3 men. The 2 women were dressed in professional clothes and were very beautiful. The 3 men looked a little bit ordinary. This group of people was led by Xiao Yusin, the person in charge of the chairman's office. She was a woman in her 30s who was dressed in a light gray suit. She looked very elegant. When Qin Sheng walked into the lounge, Xiao Yusin walked over without hesitation and took the initiative to greet him. Chairman Qin, I didn't expect you to come. When Qin Sheng went to the group last time, he had seen Xiao Yusin, but he did not know her at that time. After all, it was the board meeting where all the big shots of the group gathered. Although Xiao Yusin was the person in charge of the chairman's office, she was not qualified to be on equal footing with Qin Sheng. The chairman's office was in charge of Qin Chang'an's work schedule. Qin Sheng was very curious why Xiao Yusin did not go to Shenzhen with him. It was said that this woman had a close relationship with Qin Chang'an, and she was one of his confidants. Qin Sheng did not care about those gossip. He just reached out and held Xiao Yusin's soft hand, saying, Sister Xiao, I thought you also went to Shenzhen. I didn't go this time. The chairman asked Ding Yu to accompany him to Shenzhen. Xiao Yusin pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She looked very intellectual when she tied her hair up. In the past, many people had pursued Xiao Yusin. Unfortunately, she was already taken. Even so, there were still many scandals about her and Qin Chang'an. Qin Sheng had already learned about the person in charge of all the departments in the headquarters of the group, especially the person in charge of the chairman's office. This woman named Ding Yu was second only to Xiao Yusin. Anyway, everyone knew that there were many beautiful women in the chairman's office. There are dozens of people in the chairman's office, and 80% of them were women. Someone even jokingly said that it was Qin Chang'an's harem. Xiao Yusin and Ding Yu did not get along well. Although she was the person in charge of the chairman's office, Ding Yu was now more valued by Qin Chang'an, and she also had other duties. This made Xiao Yusin's future in the group a little bleak. There are dozens of people in the chairman's office, and 80% of them were women. Some people even joked that it was Qin Chang'an's harem. After meeting Qin Sheng last time, Xiao Yusin had an idea. At present, not many people knew that this man was Qin Chang'an's son. She did not know whether Ding Yu knew or not. But now that she knew, she naturally wanted to take action first. As long as she built a good relationship with Qin Sheng, her position would naturally rise steadily in the future. At that time, she would naturally have a way to suppress Ding Yu. After Qin Sheng took the initiative to let go of her hand, he joked, Is Sister Xiao out of favor? Qin Sheng's familiarity made Xiao Yusin not have to think of a way to open up the situation. She smiled beautifully and said, Chairman Qin, you are really humorous. There was still some time before Qin Chang'an's private plane landed, so everyone was waiting here. Xiao Yusin sat down close to Qin Sheng and even touched his body intentionally or unintentionally. When she spoke, she even leaned toward Qin Sheng. Coupled with the light fragrance on her body, everyone could see what she wanted to do. Of course, Xiao Yusin did not want to seduce Qin Sheng. She was just testing Qin Sheng's bottom line, so that it would be helpful for her to deal with Qin Sheng in the future. She did not have time to slowly interact with Qin Sheng. She had to build a relationship as soon as possible, so as to ensure that Ding Yu would not beat her to it. Qin Sheng was not moved, but he did not avoid it. He more or less guessed what Xiao Yusin wanted to do. Before entering the group, Qin Sheng knew that in the future, anyone who contacted him in the future had a purpose. Their purpose was to build a good relationship with him, the prince, so that they would be more likely to establish their position or overtake others in a roundabout way. Qin Sheng did not think of avoiding such a situation because he also had a request. It was just a normal transaction of interests, and it depended on who was more sincere. What perfume is Sister Xiao using? The smell is a bit unique, but I feel that it suits Sister Zhao's temperament very well, Qin Sheng said with a smile. Xiao Yusin winked and said, I didn't expect you to know so much about perfume, Chairman Qin. My perfume is from a relatively small brand in France, and their main product is orange perfume. If Chairman Qin has a girlfriend, I will give a few bottles to your girlfriend later. No wonder I can smell the smell of orange. Thank you, sister, Qin Sheng replied with a smile, and did not refuse Xiao Yusin's good intention. Xiao Yusin was not a loose woman, so after testing Qin Sheng and leaving a good impression, she stopped. She was afraid that Qin Sheng was the kind of rich playboy who did not care about meat and vegetables. After all, she did not know this prince very well, so she did not want to fall into the tiger's mouth. She had not reached the point where she would sacrifice herself for her career and future. Chairman Sheen, you have already become a director of the group. When does the chairman plan to let you join? This was what Xiao Yusin was more concerned about. She was not in the mood to ask why Qin Chang'an suddenly had a son. After all, everyone knew that he only had a daughter before, and this was not something she cared about. It was not uncommon for rich people to have illegitimate children, not to mention that Qin Chang'an had not remarried since the death of his wife. Everyone knew that he was a normal man. She only cared about Qin Sheng's future position in the group. Currently, from the fact that Qin Chang'an let Qin Sheng join the board of directors, it could be seen that he had high hopes for Qin Sheng, who would not want their son to take over. Of course, Qin Sheng knew what Xiao Yusin wanted to know, so he said honestly, "Oh, maybe Sister Xiao doesn't know. From today on, I will officially join." Xiao Yusin was a little surprised and said, "Really? Then we can see each other often in the future." "Ha ha! It is a pleasure to see a beauty like Sister Xiao," Qin Sheng said, half-jokingly. Xiao Yusin patted Qin Sheng lightly and said, "Chairman Qin, you really know how to make fun of me." It was almost time. Xiao Yusin and Qin Sheng did not continue to chat. They stood up unhurriedly and went to the airport to pick up. After waiting for a while at the airport, they saw Qin Chang'an and his group coming out. Qin Chang'an was not surprised to see Xiao Yusin. Almost every time he came back from a business trip, Xiao Yusin would pick him up at the airport. Moreover, she had arranged 2 meetings this morning. However, seeing Qin Sheng and Xiao Yusin talking cheerfully and wittily, Qin Chang'an frowned slightly. If it were in normal times, Xiao Yunshin would definitely go forward to welcome them quickly. However, it was different this time. No one dared to steal the crown prince's limelight. So after Qin Sheng greeted them, Xiao Yusin went forward and said, "Chairman, the morning meeting has been arranged. Do you want to go home first or go directly to the company?" "Go directly to the company," Qin Chang'an said seriously. At this time, a very tall beauty standing behind Qin Chang'an smiled faintly and said, "Chairman Qin, I am Ding Yu from the board of directors." When Ding Yu saw Qin Sheng and Xiao Yusin chatting, she immediately felt a sense of crisis. Now that she was Qin Chang'an's favorite, of course, she knew that her boss had high hopes for his son and had taken the initiative to mention it on many occasions. When did Xiao Yusin become so close to Qin Sheng? If that was really the case, she would be in a bad situation. Being shrewd and scheming, Qin Sheng had been deeply taught by the old master. Only by being close to one and alienating one would there be competition. With competition, there would naturally be benefits. So when facing Ding Yu, Qin Sheng was relatively cold. After shaking hands, he turned around and followed Qin Chang'an out. On his right side was Xiao Yusin, so he deliberately asked Xiao Yusin a few questions in a low voice. Chapter 538. Office politics. Since ancient times, wherever there were people, there would be politics. After all, people's hearts were complicated and everyone was busy with their own interests. On a larger scale, there were power divisions within the group. None of the shareholders were insignificant. On a smaller scale, there were also open and secret fights in the office. No one wanted to go further. The board of directors was also in charge of the board of directors. As the department closest to the power center of the group, everyone wanted to have a say here. In the past, Xiao Yusin's position in the board of directors was unshakable. Later, Ding Yu appeared and gradually divided Xiao Yusin's power, making her fall out of favor. Although Xiao Yusin was the actual person in charge of the board of directors, most of the time, the big boss let Ding Yu take charge of many things. Therefore, people said that Ding Yu was the person in charge of the board of directors. This made Xiao Yusin very uncomfortable, but she could do nothing about it. She could only secretly plot against Ding Yu. Now, Qin Sheng's appearance made Xiao Yusin see an opportunity. On one hand, she secretly contacted other shareholders. On the other hand, she tried her best to win Qin Sheng over. In this way, she could be invincible in the fight against Ding Yu. Qin Sheng took the initiative to talk to Xiao Yusen. It seemed that Xiao Yusen was deliberately showing off to Ding Yu. She purposely stuck close to Qin Sheng and responded to him with a bright smile. Ding Yu's expression changed slightly. She did not expect Xiao Yusen to act so quickly. This was not a good sign. Therefore, she had to find a way to solve this problem. On the way back to the group, Qin Sheng naturally took the same car with Qin Chang on. Gong Sun sat in the co-driver's seat and Chang Baji sat in the other car. As for Xiao Yusen and Ding Yu, this pair of enemies, intentionally or unintentionally, sat together. How's the wound recovering? Qin Chang'an took the initiative to ask. Qin Ran had told him what happened that night, so he knew that Qin Sheng was injured by a knife. In comparison, his injury was just superficial. Qin Sheng was touched that the old man took the initiative to care about him. He replied, "Just a small injury. I'm used to it." For Qin Sheng in the past, this was indeed a common occurrence. For Qin Sheng, what he had experienced in the past 2 years was absolutely not something that he was willing to talk about. It was just that Lin Su had experienced something with him. The wound had been bandaged. It was indeed not a big problem. Otherwise, Qin Sheng would not dare to go into the gym. Of course, he knew himself best. Xiao Yusen's ambition is not small. It's okay for you to get close to her, but you have to keep a sense of propriety. Don't be betrayed by her in the end, Qin Chang'an said, neither lightly nor heavily. Of course, there was a reason why he put Ding Yu in an important position and gradually distanced himself from Xiao Yusen. From the moment he met Qin Sheng, he had guessed all kinds of results. He had no objection to Qin Sheng playing this kind of trick. He was just afraid that Qin Sheng did not know some inside stories. Originally, Qin Sheng had wanted to ask about Qin Chang'an's injuries. However, after Qin Chang'an finished speaking, Qin Sheng changed the topic. He had obtained the most detailed information from Qin Chang'an, so he was clearer about what to do next. Qin Sheng nodded silently and said, "Okay, I know what to do." Qin Sheng would officially join the group today. Qin Chang'an was destined to hand over the power to Qin Sheng. It was impossible for him to hand it over to others. Even if Qin Sheng was not willing to take care of it in the future, he could find a professional manager to take charge of it. At that time, he could control the overall situation behind the scenes. All these were Qin Sheng's business. However, Qin Chang'an knew that it would not be so easy for Qin Sheng to take over the position smoothly. There would definitely be many people who would try to stop him. No matter what price he had to pay, he would clear the obstacles for Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng was also very clear that he could not dare to be carefree just because Qin Chang'an was his father. Those major shareholders of the group were not easy to deal with. Consequently, he had a long way to go, as if he was walking on thin ice. However, Qin Sheng was not in a hurry. He could not be impatient. He laid out a plan bit by bit and got into the situation bit by bit until he controlled the overall situation. In the car behind, at this moment, there were 2 women scheming against each other. Xiao Yusen, who had fallen out of favor, and Ding Yu, who was popular at the moment. Xiao Yusen was more charming and sexy, while Ding Yu was relatively stronger and more capable. Xiao Yusen liked to play tricks, while Ding Yu was also the kind of person who dared to confront her head-on. The 2 women had their own characteristics. Wow, Goddess Ding is now the boss's favorite. Now you don't even care about me, the person in charge of the Dong office, in your eyes. Those who don't know would think that Goddess Ding is already at the level of the deputy general manager of the group and has long left the Dong office, Xiao Yusen said in a strange tone. Since she had fallen out of favor, Xiao Yusen had thought of ways to deal with it. For example, she was now secretly contacting a major shareholder. She might not know that what she had done was seen by Qin Chang'an, but she was still useful now. Ding Yu had long been used to Xiao Yusen's strange tone. She snorted and said, "Sister Xiao, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. If you think that I am suppressing you, then you can talk to the chairman. There is no need to vent your anger on me. Moreover, you are now connected to the group's young master, who dares not to care about you." Xiao Yusen didn't like it when others called her Miss because it sounded like Miss. However, Ding Yu called her that. Xiao Yusen had no choice but to gnash her teeth in anger. She said, "Goddess Ding, you can't talk nonsense. Chairman Qin and I just met each other. Maybe you want to build a relationship with him." Ding Yu turned to face Xiao Yusin and said, "Sister Xiao, the young master has just entered the group. Everything has just begun. The chairman is watching. Don't shoot yourself in the foot." Ding Yu's unintentional words made Xiao Yusin break out in a cold sweat. It seemed like what Ding Yu had said was true. Qin Sheng had just entered the group. Anyone he came into contact with would be noticed by the chairman. This was not a good thing. Therefore, she had to be careful. However, in front of Ding Yu, Xiao Yusin would not admit defeat. She sneered and said, "Goddess Ding, you are afraid that if I am too close to Chairman Qin, you will say that the grapes are sour." Ding Yu was too lazy to say anything to Xiao Yusin. She said disdainfully, "Do whatever you want." On the way, the two women did not have any communication. They were busy with their own things when a motorcade arrived at the underground parking lot of the group. Other people from the Dong office were waiting there. When they saw Qin Sheng walking beside the big boss, they had a tacit understanding. Firstly, they had heard about the existence of this young master. After all, this news had been spreading wildly in the group recently. Secondly, this young master did look somewhat similar to the big boss. It was said that this young master was still unmarried. Many young and beautiful girls in the group were ready to make a move. In the chairman's office, the staff of the Dong office had already left. Only Xiao Yusin, Ding Yu, and two small secretaries were left. Of course, Qin Chang'an and Qin Sheng were still there. Gong Sun took Chang Baji to the lounge. The two secretaries were talking about the arrangement of the meeting later, and the other was talking about today's itinerary. When they finished, Qin Chang'an turned around and saw that Qin Sheng was still in the office. He hesitated for a while and said to Xiao Yusin, Xiao, arrange an office for Qin Sheng downstairs with two assistants. You choose reliable people and then show Qin Sheng around to familiarize with the working environment." After talking about these things, Qin Chang'an said to Qin Sheng, look for Xiao directly if you have any problems in the future. She is the person in charge of the Dong office. Qin Chang'an's arrangement made Xiao Yusin feel like she was bathed in the spring breeze. Instantly, she was full of smiles, as if she had been valued again. Moreover, this was exactly what she wanted. In this way, she would have more contact with Qin Sheng in the future, and their relationship would naturally get closer and closer. Consequently, Xiao Yusin said in a hurry, "Okay, Chairman, I will arrange it right away." Qin Chang'an had his own reasons for making such an arrangement. He did not need to explain to anyone. He just wanted to see who was more perceptive. Anyway, at this moment, Ding Yu was the one who had the most sense of crisis. When they were in the car, she had used this to warn Xiao Yusin, asking her to be careful of shooting herself in the foot. Now, she was slapped in the face, which made her feel very uncomfortable. After arranging this, Qin Chang'an waved his hand and asked Qin Sheng and Xiao Yusin to leave. Ding Yu wanted to say something, but she gave up in the end. She did not want the big boss to think that she was thinking too much. After all, Xiao Yusin was the person in charge of the Dong office, so she was very efficient. Soon, she arranged a very large office for Qin Sheng downstairs. Then she asked Qin Sheng how to decorate it or what to add. Qin Sheng did not have any requirements for these, so he smiled and declined politely. Xiao Yusin wanted to show Qin Sheng the working environment first. After all, this floor was for the senior executives of the group. For example, Hao Mingyi and Chang Sini were both on this floor. Given Qin Sheng's level, it was not suitable for him to go to other floors. However, at this moment, they were not here. They were already waiting for Qin Chang'an in the conference room. Qin Sheng asked Xiao Yusin to choose a suitable assistant for him first. After all, in the future, he would need the help of these two assistants. After Qin Sheng waited in the office for about half an hour, Xiao Yusin came in with two female assistants. They were all selected from the Dong office. One of them was her confidant, called Wei Xiaoxia. Of course, she would not miss such an opportunity. The other one was a new girl called Yin Pan. She was more outstanding. She was neither Xiao Yusin's nor Ding Yu's people. Xiao Yusin did this to avoid arousing suspicion. After all, she could not make the boss feel too disgusted. After Xiao Yusin introduced the two assistants, She reminded them a few words and then left. Qin Sheng greeted the two assistants, who seemed to have different personalities, and immediately arranged work for them. For example, he wanted to know the detailed information of the senior executives of the group, especially the promotion route within the group. Next, he wanted to know the equity structure, the structure of the subsidiary companies, and so on. Lastly, he wanted to know the strategy of the group. After hearing what he said, the two female assistants immediately went to do it. It could be seen that this young master wanted to take over the work as soon as possible. It was estimated that they would be very busy in the future. However, this was also an opportunity for them. As long as they showed enough ability, this young master would not forget them when he took over in the future. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.